Warning, the following podcast contains explicit language.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 30 of the Talking Perspectives podcast. We are, of course, the official podcast of the vast Sonic Perspectives media empire, and joining me today from somewhere in Las Vegas is a gentleman named Tom Palmieri.
Howdy.
All right, and returning for the first time in a little over a year, a gentleman named Mark Monforti, the guy behind ProgRock.com. What's up, dude?
Nothing. Great to be here.
And joining us from Chapel Hill, Miss Maria Hines. Hello.
Howdy, everyone.
If you haven't figured it out already, we are going to be talking about the Progstock Festival today. It took place, well, let's see, Thomas, you're the guy behind it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it and when it took place and how everything shook down?
The festival officially took place October 11th through 13th in lovely Rahway, New Jersey at the Union County Performing Arts Center. It actually kicked off with a bang on the Thursday evening prior on October 10th with a tremendous performance of one of the best tribute bands on the planet, known as Total Mass Retain. If they come to your area, please go see them.
Noted. All right. Before we go on into this year's edition of the festival, I was wondering if we could get a little bit of the backstory. Just, tell us a little bit of how it got off the ground and how it started becoming what it is today.
That assumes it's off the ground, but yes, I get your point. Well, I've told this story a billion different ways and times, and sometimes it's way too long. But I've been wanting to get into the music business on the side of the musicians for quite a while. And I started out by managing a band or trying to, and learning and cutting my teeth on that. A very good band that most of the people on this call know about, called Circuline. That's still doing it. And roughly about 3 years ago, I threw a party for the purposes of trying to see whether or not I could interest a lot of friends and other people around me in possibly doing something on a regular basis. Although at the time I threw it, I didn't have the idea of it being something on the order of other festivals like Rossfest and Prog Day and so on. But that party turned into quite an interesting thing. It's very infrequently that you have any type of party at all, and 80% of your invite list shows up. Usually it's the other way around. You invite 100 people and you get 20. And it was quite a resounding success. Had a few bands that are friends of ours, and that's actually where the name of the festival came from, because towards the three-quarter point of the party, it started to rain cats, dogs, sheep, and mice from the skies, and it was horrible. It was almost like we got up. A couple of us got up on stage, and we thought it was reminiscent of one of the muddier periods of Woodstock, which is why, from the stage, somebody had said this is kind of like Woodstock, and so the name Progstock came from that. And then in the following year, or at least over the course of the next 8 months, we decided to give it a shot. That was myself, Andrew Collier from Circuline, and Robert James Patchman from Third Degree. We were the three that came together and thought we could do something in this space that we thought needed to be done. Something in the New York area, the New York metro area, where there's so many people, it's not even funny, and try to make a go at a festival of this nature. And only about a couple of years later, when Rossfest relocated down to Sarasota, Florida, we are now, as a result, the only remaining one in the Northeast.
Wow. And after how many years did that happen? Because it sounds like it's a relatively young festival.
It is, yeah. So we had our first true festival in October of 2017. So that was a little over 2 years ago. Wow. And Rossfest just had its first edition in Sarasota earlier this year in May. So we had two full runs of the festival before Rossfest moved to Florida.
How did Rossfest moving to Florida affect attendance for you?
I don't know. I don't know if that's something I'll ever really be able to wrap my brain around, because it's very difficult to really find out from people. I mean, Rossfest took place for quite many years in what is basically a destination location. People go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, because it's a great place to be a tourist. And so people would have their annual vacation and make it then and do more than just the Rossfest experience. They'd be in the area for a while. But I know that George Roldan has done an awesome job with that festival for the last 15 or so years. lives down in Florida now. So he wanted to do something in an area that he's become much more familiar with, and quite frankly, is devoid of these types of things. I mean, the closest thing to him now is Prog Power USA in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So
maybe have the cruise, maybe.
The cruise. That's true. Yeah. That's true. I mean, Prog Day is just up north, where Maria is in North Carolina. But yeah, the cruise is the big one that's out of Miami or Tampa.
Well, cool. So the 2019 edition of the festival was what, number 4 for you then?
Number 3.
Wow, that is impressive, man. Good job.
Thanks. Some people have told me that 3 is a magic number. I don't understand why. But I guess we can wear it on our lapels that we made it to 3.
Well, for whatever it's worth, Prog Power 3 was the first one that I missed.
Okay, there you go.
So lucky number, not for me so much.
And what are they up to now? Are they up to 21 now?
Yeah, 22? Yeah. I was just at Prog Power number 20. 21 is next year, and it looks like 25 is going to be the last one, at least the last one for Glenn.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, it's going to be sad because that festival is a party, and I like it. Cool. Well, all right, let's go ahead and move on to Friday at Progstock. The first band. Before we go on to that, I see that the bands, very few of them get a set any shorter than 90 minutes.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal. I mean, there have been lineups in our past too where we kind of, quite frankly, squeeze too much into a day because it's just difficult, and you really want to showcase bands as much as possible and give them enough time. It's a festival, so it's not like they're going to have a full 2.5 hours like they might have if it's their only show, mm-hmm. and they're headlining themselves or with an opener. But by the same token, I'm not looking for drop in 45-minute sets here from bands that deserve a little more airtime than that. So it's a balance. Generally speaking, we won't go any lower than around 75 minutes. And we top out at about 2 hours.
And I see that you guys do a meet and greet with the band immediately after they perform.
Yes. Yeah, and again, there's no real rocket science here in the sense that, the Progstock was formed by people who have attended many other festivals in the genre. And so we tried our best to, borrow good ideas and things that we enjoy. And that whole idea of meet and greets after every performance is something that Rossfest does every year and does very well. So that was sort of a part of it. Doing it in a theater at all was something that we chose. You had either that model as a choice or the outdoor amphitheater or field model like Prog Day and others of that ilk. And we decided to go with a number of things that we thought would fit in our geography better for the time of year.
Cool. All right. So we are up to Friday, 2:30 in the afternoon. A little band called Phideaux. Mark, you have a few words about them?
Yeah. So for me, Phideaux is probably one of my gateway bands into the new era progressive rock. I had seen them at 3RP in 2009, and as I was saying, I haven't missed many of their shows since. And I've seen this particular show, I think, 3 times now. I saw it in Rosfest. I saw it in Terra Incognita in Canada, and then I saw it here at Progstock. And, they always start off with side 3 of Infernal. It's this 20-minute, maybe 15-minute epic portion. And, I just love that set. I will say that maybe, it's great that they can sound check because it's a 10-piece, right? So it's great to have them first. I know Phideaux likes to talk to people, and so he doesn't want to ever be the headliner. He always because he doesn't want to talk before he sings. So I'm sure he loved being first. I think that at first, though, that for that 15 minutes, the sound wasn't quite there yet for him, but it got better and better as the night went on. And the weird thing is, I got the backstory on that because Molly, one of their backup singers and percussionist, was actually staying with me after the show. And my cat is now attacking me. And she said that her husband, who was also here, was near the sound guy, and a 10-piece. Good luck if you've never heard the band before.
No kidding.
So they got, by the end, it was perfect. It was beautiful, and everybody. Phideaux told me it was his favorite show he did all year. He also did Summer's End, which I know was a nightmare. And I seen them at Summer's End before, and they were blowing fuses right up until the lights went on in 2010. And they had, they have 12 things they plugged in, all with American plugs. And here we are in Wales, right? And they are freaking out. I'm freaking out because I don't think they're going to get this done. And it's in a 200-year-old building with, electric added, aftermarket, as it were. And it was pretty difficult day. But their show went great. If you didn't get a chance to see one of those 4 shows this year, you really missed something. And like I said, Phideaux was so happy with Progstock, and Tom should be very happy about that because he knows his stuff, and it's a very difficult band to get obviously on stage.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Tom, like, how was it for you getting a 10-piece band to open the set, and like, how much of a logistical nightmare was it for you guys?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say this unequivocally. There is nothing even slightly unprofessional about Phideaux and his band. They were absolutely ready to rock. I mean, and they knew what they were doing. That was, think about it this way. We're faced with putting on 11 or 12 acts on stage over 3 days. And, the mornings on Saturday and Sunday are hard enough as it is because we could only get into the theater starting at 9 in the morning and the first set's at 11. So that leaves you a very small span of time that everything has to go right. But on Friday, you've got that chance to use a lot of that morning because we loaded it on Thursday and got most of our work done the day before. But that's kind of your cushion or your buffer. So when I looked at it, I'm like, well, there's 1 or 2 bands on this list that we don't know there's going to be a problem, but just the sheer scale of it scares us enough to say, hey, let's put them in a position where we have time to deal with what might come up. Especially it's the very first act out of the gate. That's when you're going to work out your last gremlins, you hope. And it seemed clear that Phideaux was the right choice for that, simply because it's a 10-piece, band. It's a monster, and I mean that in a good way. But the thing too is that we've had 3 years now where the opening bands have set the tone. I mean, really set the tone. In 2017, when we had the trio that we, the Progstock people, brought into existence, we asked Rachel Flowers, Peter Jones, and Francis Dunnery to come together and just do something. People who had really never worked together before. And they just blew the doors off the place as the opening act of our first festival. And so think of the bar we set. Now every year we have to have the first act out of the gate has to make everyone go, wow. So, and last year with Orpheus 9, it just torched the place. It was incredible. And so Phideaux seemed the right choice on multiple fronts, not just because of the risk to mitigate of having such a big band as the first one out to test every last little corner in our front of house and our monitors and everything else, but also because what a power. Phideaux could be a headliner anywhere. In fact, I would say the majority of our bands this year could be headliners anywhere. Yeah,
I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm wondering how Phideaux's reception was.
Oh, yeah. Everybody, I think, loved the show. The line was very long for merch, and I asked some people that didn't actually have never heard him before, and they're just blown away by it. And I've seen that everywhere he's played. It's just like, what did I just see? And right. It's interesting because it's a little bit tough to get your ears around the first time. But you kind of know you're going to like this if you continue listening to it,
Absolutely. And by the way, as a festival organizer and promoter, I'll say it this way. One of the easiest telltale signs that the band really knocked everyone's socks off is Phideaux did extremely well at the merch table.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the line.
People wanted everything he made. Whatever he brought, it almost all went.
Yeah. So. He's like I said, and to Tom's point, he's such a professional guy. If he didn't make a ton of money on his day job, he would not be doing this because it's just, they all take a week off of work to get ready for this show. They're in New York. They rent a studio. They all come together to get this done. I mean, it's amazing what he does for the love of the music.
Yeah, and this was a friends and family show too, because Phideaux confided in us that there were a lot of family and friends of the band that were from the area that came to see it. So this was special for them on a lot of fronts. And by the way, also special, this was the first act off, and not only that, but we had our artist in residence painting. Paul Whitehead was painting right in the theater during Phideaux's set. He was the first of 3 that he did that weekend. And we just started it off with everything, and everything was in the tank on the first set out. So.
And another thing about Phideaux there is he won that. He was the guy that won the painting because he wanted to give back to the festival because that's how much he loved it there. So.
Absolutely, yes, he was such a great guy to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that sounds awesome. I mean, I've seen firsthand how challenging it can be for a band to open a festival at such an early time. They went on at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yes,
I mean that's not exactly enviable, and for Phideaux to take that voluntarily and win everybody over, I think that speaks really, really well to Phideaux and to his ensemble.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and some of his family unfortunately couldn't take off of work, so that was the only maybe minus about that slot is that it was it's a Friday work day.
Cool. So following Phideaux's set was a group called Salem Hill. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about them and about their performance?
Sure. So first I'll say, Carl Groves, who's the leader of that band, has been a friend for many years, and that grows from my first exposure to Carl wasn't even his Salem Hill project, which ironically has existed as a project for longer than the band that I learned about or discovered Carl from, which was Glass Hammer. For quite a number of years, Carl was the lead singer of Glass Hammer. And for those studious people out there, they'll recognize Glass Hammer as our Friday night headliner from Progstock 2017. And so having done work with Carl years ago when Glass Hammer toured with the band I was managing at the time, Circuline, we became good friends. And I learned so much about his musical history, a lot of the projects he was involved in, and most specifically about Salem Hill. And I just... It's not very often that people discover a catalog of a band that you hadn't really heard, and you just suddenly want all of it. And I think that it took me 3 days to want to buy everything. And what a tremendous band with a tremendous history. I mean, they've been going for so many years now, over 20, I believe. And so even in the very first Progstock 2 years ago or so, I had talked to Carl about, hey, will Salem Hill be able to come and perform either this year or in future years? And it was always kind of, no, it's not really something we're doing. We're not sure, blah, blah, blah. And every year it was almost like clockwork. We would have a phone call and I'd say, Carl, I'm going to ask you that question again. I'll call you on Friday to ask you. And after a couple of years, of hearing no, I kept with it. And then finally, for planning this one, I called him and he said, Tom, I'm going to give you a different answer this time. And I was just, I couldn't be more pleased to have brought Salem Hill back to the stage after nearly 10 years of not doing so.
Geez, had it been that long?
I think so. I mean, Mark, do you remember when they played last?
I was actually trying to think of that right now. I was trying to look it up.
Yeah, I don't have it. My gut feels 2009. It might have been a couple of years later. But what I do know for certain is that they had never toured or played the last 2 albums they made. The Unseen Chord is 2014. So it's quite a number of years. So, but they came out and they did exactly what I knew they would do. And by the way, they were very, very vocal on Facebook through the lead up, and they did a whole lot of posting Facebook Lives of their rehearsals, especially because a lot of Salem Hill's material is very vocal harmony driven, and they all had their voices really tuned up nicely, and they were giving a lot of little snippets of how they were putting that together so well over the course of the summer. And they just came out and in my opinion, they blew the place away. It was one of the sets I forced myself to find a way to sit down and listen to as much as possible, because it's one of my 2 kind of bucket list things that happened at Progstock. So I really wanted to make
they were great.
Yeah, absolutely. And 2005, I believe, is their last.
There you
show.
go.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow, that's even longer. So, and they didn't show that they had any rust at all. And I have no idea if Salem Hill ever plans to perform live again. I know they're working on some material of some sort, but I made sure when Carl and I talked, I made sure that I got a B3 for him, because some of that earlier stuff, pulling it off, try to pull it off with something that would emulate a B3 and a Leslie was right out. I got him what he needed just to make this a bang up show.
And what are B3s and Leslies for our audience who might not know?
The B3 is one of the most fantabulous Hammond organs out there, one of the originals, and Leslie is one of the most, I guess at the time when it came out many, many years ago, one of the most innovative ways of doing, sound amplification and projection, which has got a rotating speaker cone in it. So it allows you to adjust its speed and create the effect that comes from having a speaker cone rotating.
Cool. Maria, it sounded like you had a couple things that you wanted to say about Salem Hill.
Oh, I was really impressed with them. It was a different pace for me. It was kind of like old school prog. It was just, they were just so melodic and they performed so well. And I really enjoyed that show a lot, Tom. I'm glad you included them, in the roster for the festival. It was a good balance, with
cool.
some of the heavier stuff that we're, going to see later. So
right.
Very appreciative.
Yeah, I still can't get over that it had been a 14-year break since our last live performance. And, I'm kind of wondering if you really had to, twist their arms or something to get them out of retirement like that.
No, I left all the arm twisting to Carl. I just kept asking the question every year and said, dude, I really want to do this before I can't do this anymore. Can you come out? And he made it happen this year. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Congratulations. Cool. So, I noticed that that right after that there was a little short set, about a 30-minute set by a young lady that's basically the Progstock house musician. Tell us about this.
That's very well put. We never want to use something as demeaning as the word mascot, but definitely she is. She's
the princess for sure.
I will take house musician. I will take whatever you can come up with. Look, I'm going to say this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Rachel Flowers is invited to Progstock every year. She can do whatever she wants. She can bring tin cans and hit them. She can be in front of the piano and sing anything she wants. It doesn't matter. Just tell me what it is, and I will tell the world, and everyone will flock to see her. She is a phenomenon. And if you don't know Rachel Flowers, look her up.
Okay. She's a prodigy. Truly a prodigy.
Y'all keep saying these incredible things about this young lady, but what is it about her that makes her so special?
God-given gift.
She's a channel for, I think, of some of the music that we all love on this call, as well as so much other great music. Mm-hmm. She is a multi-instrumentalist, and she does it all without having had sight since birth.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
She's just phenomenal.
I don't think I ever heard her miss a note, really. It's just amazing.
No. And the thing with her is she does these little impromptu sets where she creates music on stage. It's not something that she's ever performed. She just says, well, let's see how it goes. And it's this
absolutely
beautiful composition that you'll probably never hear again. Because
in fact, she did that.
Yeah, she did that. Yeah, she did that with Clark, actually. And
with Christopher Clark on Friday, yes, absolutely.
Chris Clark was just watching to see what chord she was going to play, to see how he would chime in. And it was beautiful to see that, this organic production of music right there on stage. And she did not miss a beat. Everything flowed. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it was kind of like watching, a typical jazz band that's got a leader who is setting the pace and where the improv composition is going to go, and everyone's eyes are focused on them. It was exactly that type of interplay between Rachel and Chris. And, when this idea came up, which was one of the first conversations that I had separately, first with Jeannie Flowers, Rachel's wonderful mother, and with the manager of Brand X, because Christopher Clark, of course, is part of Brand X, to try and have them do something together. And again, it's another one of these examples of what we try to do at Progstock. We want to have at least one circumstance where not really a forced collaboration, but some sort of collaboration happens that you'll never really see anywhere else or haven't seen anywhere else, something unique. And this was, one of those. And they talked about possibly preparing something, but then ultimately I learned on Thursday before the festival that they had chosen to take the path of really not preparing anything, but had decided that Rachel would sit there and improv and Chris would follow. And oh my Lord, what happened?
Oh yeah. And Chris was flabbergasted. Literally at the end of the show, he was like, I am privileged to perform with Rachel because she is she's a phenomenon, and it's a very rare thing to see. And yeah, we love Rachel, and she's so cute. I mean, she giggles on stage. She's adorable. She's so likable. She's so affable, and she's so talented. And you have to cheer for her. She's a wonderful girl and a great musician.
Completely agreed. I mean, Anne says this all the time as a joke, but it's really got truth in it. She could sit on stage in front of a piano and sing the alphabet song, and everyone would
and it would sound like Keith Emerson.
Tom, I do have to admit that I am a little disappointed. I really, really like the idea of forced collaboration by knife point. You got to do that sometime, dude.
Okay.
Cool. So 30 minutes of improvisation between Rachel Flowers and Christopher Clark, huh? Y'all seem kind of impressed.
You'll have to look her up on YouTube or something, because it's really. I had a friend that came in just to visit me for the weekend or a night or so, and he didn't have tickets to Progstock, and I said, "We're getting you tickets tonight because you have to see her perform. You have to see her. It's something you need to do in your lifetime, to see someone this musically gifted, perform, and it was amazing. So enough of my gushing about Rachel.
Yeah, now you can start gushing about 3.2.
Oh, okay. 3.2. Oh, with Robert Barry. That was an interesting show for me. I really enjoyed the set that he performed, but what really sticks in my mind with him is how he conducted the performance. It was kind of like conversational. It was a history, lesson between us and Barry of his relationship with Emerson and Palmer in creating 3, and how that evolved into 3.2 and some of the music. And it was just a very dynamic performance where he would talk a little bit about the history. He would walk on stage, and he was very engaging. And then he'd start the music that he would play, and the music, like he said, had this sort of, everything had this Led Zeppelin kind of undertone to everything, where he would do performed a lot of covers even, and that was really interesting to see. And then Jimmy on the drums, my goodness, I don't know who set up his sound or if it was just his drums, but he carried the whole thing. It was amazing. I was really amazed by him, and quite honestly, I had never seen Jimmy perform, so I was really impressed with him.
And this is the second year that Jimmy's been with us. Last year he played with us when Michael Sadler came as a solo artist, and he became part of Michael's band. And having Jimmy back again, it's another one of those guys that he's just so easy and so great to work with. And I want to thank him because he's always been helpful to the festival from the very beginning, helping us with leveraging endorsement relationships to help us save money. And to provide some of those souvenirs. The drum heads that we get from Aquarian are because Jimmy helped us arrange that. He's always been great. And that band, it's just full of all-stars. And that's what you'd expect, Robert Barry, right? I mean, look, he's a good friend of mine, Robert, but so is his keyboard player, Andrew Collier. I'm going to say it. It's a little bit pushing it to some people who are purists, who think that there are no other great keyboard players out there after some of the prior ones, but his job was to pull off Keith Emerson parts doing a lot of that stuff, and he did it so bloody well. And of course, it makes sense. I mean, the man Andrew's been a classically trained pianist, and Keith Emerson is one of his heroes. So of course, his gift and his talent is there, and he clearly can make it happen. And to have Paul Keller involved was also really great, because you basically had, half of 2/3 of the touring version of 3 on stage, which was really great to have.
Yeah. It was a great show. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, Tom, because Andrew just did such a great job on there. I think even Robert is kind of looking over there, shaking his head once in a while. And he is, I first met him. He was handing out a Circuline CD to me at Rosfest, and it was just, I didn't really know who he was at the time. It was just 5-6 years ago. And it was just a real treat to see him play that. I really was rooting for him. Such a nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
So after 3.2 wrapped up, that was kind of the end of the night, but not really, as I understand it. What took place after that?
So
Wow.
we all retired. We all retired to the what has become the new after party location for Progstock, which is the world famous waiting room restaurant in downtown Rahway, a short walk from the theater. I say it as become the new after party spot because in year one, in 2017, we actually used a restaurant that no longer exists, but it was right behind the theater building. It was a restaurant called Patria, and we did our first late night parties there. But since that restaurant went out of business, we had to find a new location. And I will say this about the waiting room restaurant: the owner, Chris Wenson, is an absolutely avid and wonderful supporter of the festival. He was a major sponsor this year and plans to be year over year. And not only is the food great and the atmosphere great and the libations are great, but he also is deeply involved in the festival in providing all of our backstage catering as well as all of our after-party foods. He also provided buffet foods we needed for special events. He's basically so intertwined with the festival, it's not even funny. And so we went there and had our what's now become typical after-party with a couple of performing acts. This is one of those things where I like to make a shout out to a particular individual. Not that I'm going, look, I don't want to anger anybody. There's so many people and so many names that are involved in what makes Progstock happen. This is an almost all volunteer run event every year, and there's just a sea of names. That's why we make certain that their names are printed in our festival program every year, and all the core volunteer names are up on our website all the time. But I just want to make one shout out because there is one member of our team who is very much involved in our creative process for what acts we might bring and even what collaborations we try to force, as you like it.
By that point.
And that is, right, it's necessary. And that is Marty Dorfman, who I think all of you on this call know, who is the Prog Doctor who broadcasts on House of Prog Radio. And Marty was responsible and is every year for designing our Friday night late night, which is known as the Progressive Coffee House at Progstock. So it's always going to be a lighter on the ears, a little bit of a sit down and enjoy type of arrangement because it's meant to be a coffee house feel. And Marty delivered in spades, clubs, and hearts this year by bringing over the fantabulous duo from Germany of Melanie Mao and Martin Schnella. Again, two names that if you haven't seen or heard any of what they've done, look them up on Google. They're unique enough names you won't make a mistake. Melanie Mao, that's M-A-U, and Martin Schnella. And they do some absolutely blisteringly wonderful work on acoustic guitar and vocals. And they brought the place down. They really, I don't think anyone said anything less than, my God, I enjoyed them beyond belief.
And could I chime in and say a little bit of something about the format of the festival that Tom and Ann have set up, where, you have the shows during the late morning into the evening, and then you have this after party at something that's, less structured, because all of us want to go and see the shows, and we'll see people there, and we'll chat because it's a small community. We all somewhat know each other, or we make new friends, but it's really hard during the shows to do that because you're interested in listening to the music, and then you've got breaks to meet and greet and eat and stuff. But what's really nice about the structure that you set up for this is that with that after show, we can all get together and we can mingle, and it's a place that you can actually talk to people and get reacquainted. And so it creates this family atmosphere, and it helps kind of forge the bonds that we've all kind of created amongst each other with our love of this type of music. And I was talking to a lot of people about how they like that, because with other festivals, it's not quite a structure that everybody kind of does their own thing afterwards. So these little kind of cliques kind of form and stuff. But this was a really nice setup, and I really enjoyed what you did, with the festival and setting up this way, having a common place where you can actually mingle and talk to each other and share a beer, So, thanks.
That's great. No, you're making me cry here.
It's really, and I will second that too, Tom. I mean, it's great. As a matter of fact, I almost think there's at some festivals there's too much music and not enough talking to each other. I even make it a point to go through all my Facebook friends before I go to Progstock to reacquaint myself with a few names. So, I mean, nobody would have a problem if I forgot their name, but, I always try and remember a few that, that maybe I wouldn't have. So without doing so.
Sure. And that was I'm glad that this is one of those cases where what we intended actually came to pass. That's the whole point, is to try and keep this group of people together. And as it grows, I mean, look, let's be honest, if we can grow this, it's going to be harder and harder to fit people in that restaurant.
That's true.
But then again, we believe that the restaurant's actually going to get bigger. That particular one is planning to expand. I'd like to say that we had something to do with that, but I don't want to. Maybe part of it.
Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, you had something to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I'm sorry to circle around to what you said about Marty before, but I have some little news you might like to know. We can kind of break it here a little bit. I think Marty put together Phideaux and Steve Unruh the year before. Is that correct?
He did.
So
yes.
They did a live show here, and that is going to come out probably right about now next year. So,
that's right.
So you'll be able to hear them together. Phideaux playing bass for him, of all things.
And that's actually a great thing to say, because organically that kind of built last year at Progstock 2018 when we
exactly
and RESISTOR involved, and so Steve did a late night thing, and Phideaux was basically just a guest attending the festival, and because we knew he was going to be there, Marty said, "Why don't you sit in?" And I love when those things happen. That of all the things that come from the festival and all the feelings, good and bad, of course, because that's life, that come from it, I absolutely love it when something like materializes, something creative materializes that has its roots back to at least something involved with what we did. So
exactly.
I think that validates why we're doing what we're doing.
Cool. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for Friday, for day one, the official first day of Progstock 2019. How did it?
Oh, actually, before we leave that, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
we cannot let Friday night go by without also mentioning that Friday night also included a performance by a band that actually was given two late night slots at the festival, and that's the band Valdez, headed up by Simon Godfrey, and of course Tom Hyatt from Echolin fame. And so they were intended, this is a quick story, Valdez was intended to play an acoustic set, which they did on Friday because that fit the coffee house format. But they were slated to play a full band set, an electric set, on Sunday. Unfortunately, the drummer for Valdez had an accident of sorts before, a few days or so before the festival, and broke his foot, or part of his foot.
Oh, no.
Which is, as you might imagine, is kind of tough for a drummer. So it turned out that Valdez wound up playing two acoustic sets, one on Friday and one on Sunday. But they were awesome because their music is wonderful, and Simon and Tom are such great. They're both frontmen for that band, and it's just incredible when they're on stage together. It's like watching a wonderful progressive rock show coupled with a great comedy act. It's just awesome.
And with that short of notice, well, maybe notice is the wrong word, but I mean, like with him having his accident just before the festival, I mean, I'm sure that you were relieved that they didn't have to cancel it all.
Absolutely not. I mean, Simon, kind of sort of abashedly sent us an email saying, "I'm really sorry to tell you this, but blah blah blah," and we're like, "It's not a problem, man. Do what you got to do." I mean, acoustic is kind of tongue in cheek because it was Simon on acoustic and vocals with Tom Hyatt on bass, but they also had their keyboard player with them, so it was kind of acousto-electric.
No electric chairs, though.
Right.
Oh, no electric chairs? I am disappointed.
No, sorry. No. Not that kind of party.
Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap things for Friday, for official day one of Progstock 2019. How did Saturday get started, Tom?
Waking up after about an hour and a half of sleep.
You slept that much? You lucky dog.
Yeah, I know.
No promoters sleep that much. You gotta count yourself among the fortunate.
I'm being generous calling it sleep. I think it was passing out and then coming to. But
that sounds a little more accurate.
Yeah, but no, Saturday morning started with a bang. So I don't know. I do not know if anyone else has laid claim to any of the phrases or any of the catchphrases that come out of things, because I kind of think any ideas that I or people who work with me have, others have probably had before, simply because we know we're not the only people doing this. But Saturday morning for us, we're kind of tongue-in-cheek calling the Synagogue of Prague slot. Knowing, of course, that Sunday morning is usually considered the Church of Prague. So given that it's Saturday, we figured we call it the Synagogue of Prague. And for this, we had absolutely wonderful band, Jane Getter Premonition, to basically wake the hell up everybody in that audience. And just a quick thing before we go into Jane. This is an experience I didn't expect to have. Look, we strived. What's the past tense of strive?
Strove?
We worked. How about this? We worked really hard. Okay.
If
I'm going to ask the two people. I'm going to ask the two people on this call. The two people on this call for whom English is not their first language will speak it much better than Mark and I. So
that's right.
That's usually how it goes.
Right.
Speaking as an Italian immigrant, huh?
No, that was 3 generations ago. But okay. I learned Jersey Italian. So anyway, but here's the thing: we worked really hard this year, like we do every year, to try and figure out what did we do wrong or could we fix from last year, and whether it's tweaking how we do it or fundamentally changing something to make it better. We did what we could, and this year we wanted to stay much more on time with sets and get the changeovers to work well and do a whole lot of more pre-planning and pre-communication. We worked really hard at that, and I think we did a good job at it. So having said that, Friday went off without a hitch. Everything was within the time limits and constraints that we had set for it. And here we are Saturday morning wanting everything to be right to get off our set at 11 a.m. And here's the funny part that I didn't think about. We were ready to go. First note at 11 a.m. But the crowd was outside. The crowd was in the lobby. They were in the street saying hello. And we're flashing the lights in the lobby, and we don't realize until a little bit too late that the folks aren't in the lobby necessarily seeing the lights flash. They're out having fun talking on the street. So we literally had to send some people out there to go, get in the theater, people. We want to start the festival. I never expected that to happen. So we got started at 11:15 or so, maybe 11:20, but it wasn't our fault.
Tom, I think next year you need to have somebody dressed up as a herald and just go out there with a bugle or something.
Bullhorn and somebody to play reveille on the bugle.
There you go.
Yo, I got a better idea. Knife point.
We're always back to knife.
Excellent.
It's always knife point with you. Always.
Now we're going to have to go talk to someone and borrow one of the knives that Keith Emerson stuck into one of his mugs and have that as the knife point.
Okay, so yeah, Jane Getter Premonition.
Yeah, so we got everyone in, and Jay Getter Premonition took the stage. Now, talk about another band that is just rife with all-stars. This is a band, I will say it this way, because Anne Rinaldi, of course, who is my right arm, my right leg, the right side of my body for this festival.
She's all that is right with you.
Because everything else is so wrong. Nice. Thank you. So I will say, she said this before, Jane's band is probably the only band, maybe not fully, but I would say definitely the one that people made notice of, where each member of the band had their own fan clubs, that they were coming to see that person, regardless of the band they were in, right? So you've got Jane herself, which has who has a great following. You've got her husband, Adam Holzman.
Wow.
Whoa, I thought you said Alan Holdsworth for a second. I'm like, wait, how did that happen?
Not only does he have his own following for his own music, but I mean, the man started with Miles Davis, and he plays on tour with Steven Wilson, which is where everyone knows about him in our circle. So you've got him there. You've got Alex Skolnick from Testament, who's touring right now, if I'm not mistaken. People are coming to see him.
Yep.
Yeah, Mark
I know
Egan.
Alex.
Okay, right. You got Mark Egan, who has his own fan club. You got Gene Lake on drums, who got his own fan base as well from all the work he's done. And then they, just because that's not enough, they stir in Randy McStine for half the set. So,
yeah, true.
It's like Sunday already has everything on it. Now we got to put creamy caramel sauce on it. It's amazing.
Dude, you weren't joking. That does sound like a headliner right there.
It is. It should be. I wasn't trying to be jokey about it when I said it. Nearly every band on this lineup this year could headline their own anything festival or definitely their own show. And so, this band it lit the place on fire. Not literally, thank the Lord, but this had the intention. This fit the intention we had. We wanted the Saturday morning because it's the first full day has gone by. People are adjusting. They're maybe a little tired because they probably did a little bit too much partying on Friday night, not pacing themselves yet because some people sprint at the beginning of a marathon. But this was meant to wake everybody up. And wow, Jane and her band made a ton of fans. And that's just anecdotal. People, not just on Facebook, but just walking around talking about it the rest of the weekend long. Jane was, to many people, the highlight of the new thing they saw at this festival.
CD or vinyl.
Right. And Anne's right. Not a single CD or vinyl album that they brought survived. Wow. Every single piece they brought.
Is she considered prog? I mean,
well, I mean, there's a religious argument. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No politics or religion. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, he already said Prague Synagogue, so.
Yeah, right. Well, hey.
I just didn't know, like, historically, because she's been around, if she's considered prog or if that's the style that they've developed now,
Well, it's got elements of, like, this is, again, one of these subjective evaluations, but I think they're far more believed to be fusion. There's a lot of jazz and rock elements in it, which, quite frankly, prog has in it anyway. Yes. So it's difficult for me to say, to find anyone who would say it's not prog. It's no offense, it's not like we put Bon Jovi on stage, right? So,
come on, it's New Jersey though.
Thank you.
That's wonderful stuff. But that's straight rock. The Jane is, there's nothing straight rock about Jane's band,
right? For sure.
And it blows you away with not just the talent that's there, but the compositions are wonderful. It's just we made a point, Ann and I, of seeing Jane I think twice at least on the tour that she had just done with this group of people. And we just knew every time we saw that band that came together for us play more and more shows that they were just going to blow people away. And I'm just so glad that it did.
Okay. No, it's all good. Mark, did you have anything that you wanted to add about Jane Getter?
That was the band that I was most thinking that I hadn't seen before that I thought I would really like, and it sure did. Definitely, if I want to add to the religious argument, that it was, it definitely appeals to a prog audience, whether or not it's prog or not. It's neither here nor there. So
we'll leave that to the ear of the listener, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool. Sounds like Saturday got off to a smoking start. That's awesome.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Cool. Up next, Mark, what can you tell us about Discipline?
So, kind of like Phideaux, Discipline's a band that I don't miss too often. They're from Detroit. I live in Chicago. I will make the 8-hour round trip drive to see them when I can, when they're playing locally, and they're wonderful. I mean, to see Matthew Parmenter do his thing, which he did standing for the first time. I never noticed him. Never did that before that I've seen him. And, he is, he's on the keyboard. He's drawing all focus from everybody at first. And he has that kind of maniacal thing he does with his hands, like excellent type of thing, and he's drawing such, it's just amazing to watch this guy do his stuff. And he wears face paint because he originally was a little bit shy. He has stage fright. But he doesn't have that anymore, but he leaves it on because it's obviously kind of it's kind of, they're known for that now. And he said what he could do with that face paint was when he would look in the audience, he would kind of blink first, and he kind of get kind of off his game. But when he put the makeup on, he could stare at somebody in the audience and they would like turn away. They would be like, kind of like, he liked the reaction he got from people. And so that's why he did that. And Tom, I think, said it best. He was very excited to have that band. He said it was like, this is the band that I give to people when they're maybe thinking about progressive rock as a genre to look at.
Absolutely.
And the guys are great. Yeah, Matthew Kennedy is in the band. He's in Phideaux as well. So you got Chris Herron, who's awesome on the guitar. He replaced a guy named John, who was the original guitar player that moved away. But Chris is great. He's the songwriter and guitar player for Tiles as well.
Cool.
And Paul on drums is just outstanding. He can play any room. They played my house actually for my 50th birthday, and they didn't know it was my 50th birthday. Nobody knew. But
they thought it was your 70th.
Yeah, they thought it was my 70th. Thanks. And he could play this, room for 50 people, just like he plays a big room, just beautiful. And he's got a solo album out now too. And they sounded great from the get-go. It was awesome. They have this thing they do in the last two tours where they go from circuitry, I think, to Canto 4, all in one song. And it's just like butter. It's beautiful. Just love it.
I agree. And Mark, I was going to say, when Matthew decided to stand, just added such a more dramatic presentation. Because you and I have both seen him in a lot of places. I've seen them in places where the conditions are more cramped, and so sitting behind the keyboards is more comfortable. But he had that whole big stage to work on, and just having him stand up back there, he could do a lot more emotively. That was so good for that music, especially because there's so much in there. If you listen to Discipline's music lyrically, words mean so much. It's really a band. That's why it's one of the reasons why I said what I said about when a friend wants to get into prog, I give them some Discipline, because there's so much.
I think that's for me. It's not quite gateway prog. It might be more something a little more kind of with the melodies. If somebody likes old Genesis, I would say go ahead, definitely check out Unfold Like a Staircase right away. You got to hear it.
I'll say this to you, and a friend of mine actually corroborated this with me. Folks that I know who like grunge,
really
Discipline.
Interesting. I would never think that.
There's some similarities there, especially to a lot of the A minor stuff. It's very, very much in that palette, that musical palette, which is probably why it appeals to me so much, because I'm a closet grunge fan as well.
Gotcha. Well, and speak to your lyrics. I mean, that song Canto 4 is about the kind of what he feels is absurd about people being born before Jesus are in this purgatory for eternity. And there's lyrics in there saying, here I am trapped by your religion. I mean, it's totally dark, interesting lyrics. It definitely, if you haven't listened to Unfold Like a Staircase, if you haven't listened to lyrics, pull that one out again and listen to the lyrics. It's really haunting and interesting.
Agreed. Yeah. And I said it. I actually said this on stage, and I referred to this earlier with Salem Hill. Discipline is the second of the two bands this year that it was bucket list for me to have them play for us.
Yeah, that's a great call.
I had to have it happen. And by the way, they're going to play again this November at the New Jersey Prog House for the New Jersey Prog House's Hootenanny. I believe it's November 15th is one of the dates, 15th, whatever that weekend is in November, please, around the 15th of November. And it's a special one because it will apparently, I've learned, it will be the final New Jersey Prog House show happening at Roxy and Duke's, because Roxy and Duke's is closing.
Oh, it's a shame. And
so try to make it out there. It's a big, huge celebration.
And how's Jim Robinson doing? I haven't heard much from him since he had health issues. Is he doing all right? Is he at the show?
Great. Thank you for bringing that up. So for those folks who know about the New Jersey Prog House and its 20-plus now year history, Jim Robinson has been at the helm of that since its inception. Jim was the first person I called in late 2016 when we were planning the first Progstock, and I needed to figure out how to do a production. He was the first person I called, not only because of the Prog House, but because of his involvement with Nearfest in the past. And I just wanted the right guy. And he agreed immediately to be a part of it and to bring a lot of his team from the Prog House, who are great volunteers involved with the festival that we love so much. And he was our production manager in the first year, and he was our production manager in year two. But unfortunately, in a few months before Progstock happened in 2018, he suffered a massive heart attack right after Prog Day that year. So it was in September. Everybody, myself and everybody, we put everything on hold for at least a week to try and, regroup and first focus on Jim and his family and help them get to where they needed to be. And as it seemed like Jim was going to eventually come out of the woods, we turned our attention back to the festival. And I want to say a little shout out that the person who helped us then to take over the reins that Jim held last year was Ray Laboda. He was very, very helpful, and a special shout out to him. But this year, of course, Jim wanted back in like you wouldn't believe, and we wanted him in, and we were just so happy to have him. He's so much healthier now. Everything, the surgery went well. Everything went well. His life is back in gear, and he's taking care of himself, and he looks great. And he was absolutely firing on all cylinders all weekend long.
That is wonderful news. So, shortly after Discipline did their signing session, Rachel Flowers came back out. Mark, how'd that go?
Well, she was wonderful again, and I believe that if I remember correctly, I'm getting my performances possibly mixed up. Was this with Robert?
Yes.
So Robert was so enamored with her playing, and that he decided he wasn't even going to play his stuff. He's like, let's just have Rachel go with this. This is just too wonderful, and I want to watch it as much as you do. And I'm trying to think of a word something that hasn't been said, but she seems so genuine. It's somebody not like me that loves the music as much as me, and there's something about that's just wonderful. And it's great. And I was always wondering how you found her, so I'm just so glad to know that story as well. But it was, to say any more, it's just redundant, I think, at this point, from me anyway. Tom, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll say, that was kind of not really a shock in the end, but they originally were planning to do one song together that Robert wrote, that he sent to Rachel to learn, which was a song that Robert had written shortly after Keith Emerson passed away, about his relationship with Keith and everyone's relationship with Keith from his perspective. And so they did that song together, and that was meant to be, our way of the whole festival's way to pay homage to Keith, which, quite frankly, almost everyone does when they stand behind their keyboard. They're paying homage to Keith in some fashion. But for Robert to choose not to do the other thing he had in mind was just gracious, because then Rachel played some of her own compositions, and it was just stunning. Again, I'll say it again. She can come any year. She can play anything she wants. I don't care what it is, because it will work in any setting. And another thing about Rachel, is a good opportunity to bring this up. She does it all. And what I mean by that is not just other instruments like flute and guitar and other things. Now stick, I've heard she's playing stick. Nice. But she also participates in everything. So she was. There are many people. A lot of people won't know this, but every year, somewhere on the planet Earth, for the last 20 plus years, there is a gathering of Gentle Giant fans that come together that are original members of a mailing list that started back in the 70s when Gentle Giant was on the scene, and it's called GORG, which stands for Global On Reflection Giant Gathering. Yeah. And that event happens at a different place on the globe every year. And this year it was to take place in the United States. And the people who were to organize it this year were Alan and Amy Benjamin, who are not only members of the New Jersey Prog House staff, but were also key volunteers for Progstock since its inception. And so from the very beginning of this, Alan and I worked together to try and make the GORG event be connected in some fashion to Progstock, or Progstock to be connected to it. So that's why GORG occurred in Rahway this year. It occurred the entire week prior to Progstock, and it actually transitioned Gorg ended on Thursday morning, and we started on Thursday evening. So as a result of that, and this was all meant to happen, and as a result of that, some people in the audience may have noticed this. We had two absolutely wonderful guests with us all weekend long from the world of Gentle Giant. We had Gary Green and his wife with us. No, Gary Green was solo. I'm sorry. We had Malcolm Mortimer and his wife with us the whole weekend. They were just reveling in it. We made them official guests of the festival. But they were there the whole week before. And during that week, of course, they had some major Gentle Giant events, including... Kerry Manier was there as well. He just couldn't stay for the whole weekend, so we had to say goodbye to him before Progstock started. And then Derek Schulman came out for a special event on Wednesday when Gorg was having its final party and jam to do the unveiling of the new Gentle Giant treasure box for the first time. But the reason why I bring this up is not only to describe that and how these events work together, but also because Rachel Flowers was specifically invited by the organizers of Gorg to be a part of it as well, starting on Wednesday when they had their big jam. And that's when Gary and Malcolm and Kerry and other people from the Gorg community were playing on stage at the Waiting Room Restaurant in Rahway, New Jersey. And there's Rachel as part of that team. And for some of the members of Gentle Giant, this is the first they had ever seen her or heard of her. And every single one of them were stunned with what she did. Of course, she sat down there and played such classics. So they played Proclamation, they played Cogs and Cogs, they played Gentle Giant stuff that just makes you want to cry. That you can see it played so well. Rachel does it all, and everyone wants her involved. Even our late night activities, which we'll talk about in a little while since we're going chronologically. She's involved in all of those until the wee hours of the morning. On Cruise to the Edge, she's involved in the late night live activities that occur almost every night after everyone who has a heartbeat has gone to bed. Only us vampires stay up all night long on that cruise ship. And she's just so sought after. And people who play with her, and they'll all tell you this, people who play with her up their game and all play better for playing with her.
Where did this girl come from?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a remarkable family, by the way. I'm told she has a very talented brother who's an artist. And their mother, Jeannie, is absolutely amazing. She's a great vocalist on her own. And it's just amazing. I don't know where it comes from. I'm just glad we.
And when Rachel sings, she literally sounds like an angel. Her voice has that kind of airy quality. She is just something else to behold. She really is. And her mother,
so what's going to happen now?
Can
right?
sing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's still in her 20s. What are we in for over the next 10 years or so?
I don't think I'm ready.
Duly noted, we are keeping an eye on that name. All right. Up next, rocket scientists. Gentlemen, what y'all got?
This was a dream for me, too. Mark, I know you want to say something, too, but I just want to say this.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I got I've always been a fan of Eric Norlander and many of the projects that he's involved in, not the least of which is Rocket Scientists. It's amazingly good at everything. And so I finally got the chance to meet Eric at an event in Anaheim at NAMM, at the NAMM show a few years ago. And our good friend of the festival, Eric Nielsen, who is one of our photographers, he introduced me for the first time to Eric Norlander and other people around him. And it's great. We kind of hit it off really, really quickly and started, I think, a good friendship that has lasted, and I hope it will for much longer. But we joked at the beginning about getting a project that Eric is involved in to the festival at some point, whether it was Eric's solo work or other things he's been involved in, including the more recent project that he's been doing with John Payne, Dukes of the Orient. In fact, before I leave Vegas this weekend or tomorrow, I'm supposed to talk to John since he lives out here in Vegas. But those of us on the team who, especially one of the members of our team, Kurt Mattson, who's a big fan of rocket scientists, we always knew that if we wanted Eric to be on stage, we'd love him to bring that if he could. And we kind of put that in his ear a little bit. And then there was an event that occurred earlier this year that was kind of a grand opening, if you will, of an organization that is just outside of Philadelphia called EMEAP, the Electronic Music Education and Preservation. I forget what the last P stands for. But it's basically dedicated to the whole notion of being effectively a museum for both the artifacts and the ideas behind electronic music and its pioneers. And this includes people like Bob Moog and others. But, you know, the particular event that occurred earlier this year was them bringing home, if you will, because that's now the home of Keith Emerson's Modular Moog, which is kept. And so, in fact, those people who know that the Moog has been at the Met in New York on display for an exhibit they had there, it was actually loaned to the Met by this organization, EMEAP, because they are now the curators and preservers of the Modular Moog. And so this was a big event where members of the Emerson family were brought in. Michelle Moog herself from the Bob Moog Foundation was there, and many other people. And amongst the other people in the audience, I mean, Rachel and Jeannie Flowers were there because you betcha they asked Rachel to sit down in front of anything there and play it, and she did. And other artists were there too. Eric Norlander was there, of course. Larry Fast was there. Eddie Jobson was there. It was a great little party of sorts. And that's where Eric and I just finally pulled aside and I said, dude, can we make this happen? And can we make Rocket Scientists happen? And he said yes. He had already kind of knew we were going to ask him, and he had asked his band members, his original band members, to come back together and make it happen. And then we learned shortly thereafter that they were doing it as their final performance ever, which whenever I hear that, I mean, I hate to be the last of anything, I think, but I also kind of like having the last of anything, maybe, because, you know, we had that last year with Eddie Jobson saying that it was his last performance of UK material. And so it's there for posterity now. It's history made. And apparently Eric has said that Rocket Scientists will have now had their last performance at Progstock.
Wow. That's like both sad and an honor.
That's why I'm mixed about it, but yeah.
Well, it's good that it was the last one, because the last one would have been 10 years ago. So you should not feel bad about that. It was the second last one, really.
There you go. Was that 3RP?
I don't think it was. It might have been the 3RP I didn't go to. Okay. I'm trying to figure out if I was there or not. I was looking through my history and I don't know. I don't think I was there for that. I guess I was seeing a lot of Eric Norlander solo in California. And I thought it was Rocket Scientists because they played some Rocket Scientists songs.
Right.
So I think that was a huge win there, Tom. I can't tell you, that was, you know, I was trying to think about, am I going to really enjoy this or not? And I seen him a couple times. I seen Eric Norlander in Chicago and California, and I'm like, it was good, but man, I don't remember it being that good. Man, that was outstanding.
Yeah, and you know, he pulled together the right original cast. I mean, he had Mark McCraig there with his vocals are still so dead on, and Don Schiff, the master of the stick and the NS, and then Greg Ellis on drums. My lord, what a band! And I think again, they sold a ton of stuff. And again, that I hate to always beat that drum, but that is indicative of people who had either never heard Rocket Scientists before or only heard a little bit of it. When they go and they scoop up everything that's available, that's evidence that it was a win, and people really, really, really dug it. So
that was a very tight set, very tight.
Oh yeah. And one other quick story. Eric wanted this to go with a bang, obviously, because he was telling me that it was going to be their last performance, and so he asked me. He said, I know this is going to be a real heavy lift, but for the back line for this, can you help me get one of the original synthesizers that he was involved in the design of, which was the Alesis Andromeda. His name is all over the design of that thing. He has one at home, but he has one at home, and they're hard to get. So the idea was, let's not traipse it across the country because something could go wrong. So we kind of went nuts trying to find one. Not too nuts. Obviously, backline companies that we're working with looked at us and said, "You want a what?"
Just call your local museum.
Right. And it's funny. It's that there's a band that's playing locally here at the Prog House in November called the Yellow Box that actually has one, but that wouldn't work out because they weren't going to be here at the right time. And then there was another possible angle we were following, but then ultimately, our friends at EMIAP, the same people I was talking about a little earlier, they had one of the original prototypes in their storage that they were preserving, and they were more than willing, at Eric's behest, to pull it out, make sure it worked, make sure the software was right on it, and bring it. They drove it up. 2 members of EMIAP brought it to the festival from outside of Philly for Eric to play it for the final performance of Rocket Scientists. I think that's wonderful. And I think EMIAP will be involved in what we do in the future. It's really, really great.
I know you guys can't see me doing this, but my mouth is wide open right now. That was such an awesome thing for them to do.
Oh, it was amazing.
I figured you didn't get them until you told him you could get that keyboard, and then he agreed. I didn't think it was going to be the other order.
No,
to tell you the truth.
No. It's funny. It's funny when Eric first put his stage plot together and his backline requests.
Yeah.
And I was talking with him. I said, I may have mentioned this once before. Maybe you don't remember. We also have a nearly $500,000 Fazioli piano on stage, which is another star of this production. Just the instrument itself. Rachel has been playing it for 3 years. Many of the other artists look at it and salivate that they want to play it. And so Eric went off and redesigned his stage plot to include him moving over to the piano a couple of times because everyone who's there wants to play it. So we had Tom Brislin tickling that thing last year like you wouldn't believe. So the whole thing is just all of these things grow organically, but they all grow because everyone loves it and everyone loves what they're doing. And nobody's forced to do anything. The ideas just flow, and it becomes a great creative success. And I think that's great.
And the sound coming from that piano is absolutely beautiful. And it was really, you could tell it was a quality piano. I couldn't tell what it was, but it's like, wow, it's just such a rich, vibrant sound to it.
Yeah, it's the Ferrari of pianos.
Before we move on to the next set, I do want to say one thing about Eric Norlander, is that for me personally, Arion never sounded the same without him. He did those 2 albums with him in 2000, and then there was he just brought something. Just what he contributed to those albums for me made them my 2 favorite Arion albums.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I think I just saw. Which albums was he on?
Flight of the Migrator and what was the other one called? The Dream Sequencer. The Mellow
Dream
one.
Sequencer, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Man, and
Makes
wow,
sense.
just wonderful pieces of work.
I guess I got one little story that you might like. I asked Eric Norlander, because he was with Saga for a while. I asked him, how did the Saga poster end up on the 40-Year-Old Virgin movie right next to Mystery Science Theater?
Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that.
I'm going to have to go watch that movie again.
I thought it was so funny that a 40-year-old version would have those posters up there. And that was done by a guy named Jay Elvis, who was in the first year of Mystery Science Theater. He was part of that group that did the 40-year-old version. And he's a big prog rock fan. And so is Frank Conniff, the guy that replaced him in season 2 of Mystery Science Theater. Yep. So they just decided to go ahead and they would put those up. They'd be the perfect thing for a 40-year-old version to have up in his bedroom. So,
Dude, thank you for reminding me of that. The only thing that I remember from that movie is the chest waxing scene because because my then lady friend. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop right there. Y'all can fill in the blanks.
Yeah. That was done real. If you didn't know it, he actually did that. So,
and I have personal knowledge that it was incredibly painful.
Yes, I'm sure. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Okay, before I relive my trauma yet again. Up next, Randy McStine, a former panelist on this very podcast. Who wants to talk about this guy?
I'll take Randy. I love Randy. Yeah,
take Randy. I'm sure he'd appreciate
honestly, it. Randy, I don't have enough, superlatives to describe Randy, to tell you the truth. I mean, everybody knows he's an excellent musician. He's been labeled as a, prodigious guitarist. I think he was playing since he was 5 years old. I've seen pictures of him with a guitar in his hand, and he was holding it really well. And now he's kind of come on his own as being a talented songwriter. And if you know Randy personally, if you've had a chance to talk to him, he's a super nice and humble guy too. So with kind of all those qualities, we're all rooting for him to be successful in his new venture as a solo artist. Because he really can play any instrument, and he plays it really well. And he's described himself before as the sort of the guitar for hire, and that's what he's been trying this year to kind of get out of that mode. A session artist, or someone to be guitarist for collaborations, and he's played as a member in various bands. He played with the Fringe with some of the greats, Jonas and Nick DiVirgilio. He plays a lot with Dave Kerzner and whatever collaboration of people that Kerzner is getting together for festivals or shows. And so this year I've really been following Randy and supporting him, as he's going into his solo venture and writing and playing, his own music and in his way, in his style, which is really quite different from the way he plays when he's with these other groups. And so I've seen some of his shows. I've seen him in New York at the Bitter End. I've seen him on another festival that's on a boat in February. We will not promote that on this session. But that's actually where I saw him first. And it was about 3 or 4 years ago. And he's this kid. I mean, he's young. He's I don't know if he's 30 yet. And so he's still got a lot of growth, but obviously that talent is already there. And he looked like, he had a button-down shirt and glasses and a neat haircut. He looked more like an accountant than he did, a guitarist. And but when he stepped on that stage, it was amazing to see, because he's got a lot of raw talent there. And with the solo stuff that he's doing, that he performed in Progstock, I listen to his music and I consider it both, prog in that it's very, very intellectual, but also very, very emotional. He really pours out his heart and soul into his songwriting. It's kind of therapy for him, I would think. He still brings in, the mastery that he has with the guitar, but with his songwriting, he actually creates, some space within the songs, and that space kind of lets the song breathe, gives you as the recipient time to think about it, time to feel the song, try to understand what he's trying to relay in the song. And it's quite different, again, from all the shredding that we know that Randy can do, because he can shred. He's very talented. And that's what we see when he's with Kerzner or with his Fringe, he's shredding there. So with all these skill sets that he has as a master guitarist, at the ripe old age of 20-something, he's gotten the attention of some great musicians who've contributed to this solo album, like Holzman, and, monster drummers like Marco Miniman and Blundell and
I think Craig, I was going to say Craig Blundell, yeah.
Craig, yeah. And then lately, I think his latest one is with Nick, again, who they do a lot of things together. But, everybody's so busy in different things that I know that he wanted to kind of keep going with the Fringe, but he wasn't really ready to wait for them to kind of get it all coordinated. So solo is what he wanted to do, write his own music, express his own, emotions, and use his own songwriting skills with that. And if I had to describe, in listening to his solo work, and I've seen it written down before, and I think it most accurately describes his work as, the ambient, prog, the ethereal, very airy, atmospheric, prog, if you will. And you can really hear it in if you don't know of any of Randy's solo pieces, I would start with like Idol. Idol is really beautiful. And the music, and both the music and Randy's voice just kind of floats in that song. So it's a good one to start out with. And my other favorites are like the Bottom Feeder Blues, which is a really swampy vibe to it, and the Master. And I think this kind of space and songwriting, this introspection, this, along with his undeniable talent, it's really kind of something that's needed, and we really appreciate. I really appreciate, and I think the prog music world really needs it and appreciates it too. So good things are happening for Randy, along with performing at Progstock. He's opened for Morris and Company's Flying Colors, and he's starting a tour opening for Pineapple Thief, which is a really nice opportunity for him. And I'll be catching him at the Charlotte show, I think in November. So good things for Randy. He's a great musician. We all love him.
Yeah, and Randy's another one of those artists who's been at every Progstock so far in some fashion. So he's appeared either with other bands as he's done in the past, or the solo work like he did this year. He must have felt a lot more comfortable with us, Maria, because he wore a Roxy Music T-shirt on stage. He didn't get all buttoned up, and it was perfect. And it was a loud color, so it was perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
And one of the things I'll say is that when Randy's solo stuff is absolutely great, and even the stuff I would say maybe just before he decided to do a lot more truly solo stuff with his Lo-Fi Resistance project was also wonderful, and he still plays that stuff. It's funny, the first time I ever saw Randy, because I didn't know about him either, the first time I saw him was when he was playing with Son of Contact as part of the touring band.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Cruise to the Edge. And actually it was the Moody Blues Cruise at the time, because they played both cruises that year. And it was just stunning from the very beginning, because that album, Dimension Knot, was an incredible album that Dave Kerzner was also involved in, obviously. But that was the first time I actually got to see him, and he was much younger then. I think he's 30 now, so let's put the brakes on the.
I mean, there's just so much room for growth there, and coupled with the fact that everybody wants to work with him because he's so generous and kind and easy to work with. That he's just going to go up. That's only one direction. Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Yeah. And one thing I'll say too, having seen his solo work, just like you at the Bitter End and other places, whenever we get a chance, he's put together a trio now. He has two really good players with him on bass and drums, and wow, to hear this stuff, the stuff that we see him do solo with his effects pedals and his looper, to create that wall of sound in some of his songs. When he does that with the trio, it is on fire, and it's we just couldn't work it out to do it this year with the trio, so we invited Randy to be just basically an opening acoustic act for our headliner that night. But I would love to have Randy's trio.
They're a great combination together. They're friends, and they do work very well together. And so after the cruise. That festival on a boat, Randy kind of made that sort of subtle announcement that he was going to try to kind of start, slowly releasing some of his solo stuff. As his confidence gained, as he kind of felt like there was an audience for it that would appreciate it. And to listen to those first songs that came out versus what's now, you can really, really see his growth as a songwriter, as a singer, because he primarily was guitarist with some singing, but he's really, really grown, and you can distinctly see that evolution, over the last few months. We're talking a few months, less than a year, that he's grown, and now he's opening for Pineapple Thief. So there's some really good stuff that's going to come out of him in the next, year or so. So I'm excited for his future.
Cool. So, the headliner Saturday night was a little group called Brand X. Tom.
By Saturday night, we wanted to take everything you thought you knew about prog and not only turn it on its head, but shove it in a bag and throw it over the cliff. So, here comes this absolutely funky fusion powerhouse, just blasting your face off. And that's what they did. So Brand X, of course, I think I've heard it referred to as Phil Collins' other band. His mistress, I've heard other people talk about it that way too. They did not, clearly they did not disappoint. They pulled out stuff from all of their great albums. Look, the cornerstones of that band are still there. You've got Percy Jones still playing the fretless like it's silk. And you've got John Goodsall, who was in great shape, really doing a good job, and just keeping the audience riveted. And some of the lines when he plays some of the guitar lines from some of the classic Brand X stuff, and he's still doing it just today, just as fluidly as he did in the past. It's just incredible to watch and to hear. And then, of course, the other members of that band now, Christopher Clark, known inside the band as Mr. Twiddly Fingers. The man is absolutely a monster keyboard player. Just sometimes you have fun with Chris Clark if you see him out at a show and he's in the audience or what have you. And there's a song being played on stage by some band, let's say a Yes tribute band or someone covering something in the prog world. He'll tell you not only where they got a note wrong, but he'll tell you which live version they're playing from which album, released when. It's unbelievable what he knows. Ask him to sit down anytime to play anything off of any Yes album ever, and he'll play it note perfect. And Kenny Grahowski on drums, absolutely incredible. Involved in so many other projects. Recently got to see him play with Marcus Reuter in a new project that's coming to light. What a band! And there was so much fun to work with. Absolutely professional. Everything was easily put together. Sound checks were easy. They're just a great band. And I think maybe we're trying to mix it up every year. We're trying to have at least 2, if not 3, things that are kind of outside of the symphonic prog realm, just to have a little bit of flavor change, a little palette change. And we wanted to have a fusion band. And aside from the fact that we kind of had some of that in what Jane Getter is in the Premonition band, Brand X seemed like, well, you want fusion? Here it is. We're going to slap you right across the head with it. and it did.
Well, I definitely think that the band is special, and that it is. I've seen them they played Chicago last year, and just outstanding musicianship. I had seats like above the stage where I could just look right down at the drums. It's just amazing to check them out, and really, it's not really my genre, but they're just fantastic, and I'm so glad that people got to see them. Maybe it was outside of their comfort zone that got to see them at this festival.
That's a good way to put it. Outside the comfort zone. That's about where they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Would you guys consider them like a solid way to close out Saturday night?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's different than Brand X was probably. I would love to ask other people and kind of do some research on this, but my gut feel is that Brand X would be considered by people who went to the festival as the clearly different from everything else performance.
The oddball.
Right. Not that all the others are samey. They're not. I mean, they're people have their subjective opinions on what sounds like what or what feels like what. But there's a whole lot of variety, especially in this year's lineup. But Brand X definitely, in a good way, stands out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? Like it was a very different thing. It was right at the midpoint of the festival, if you think about it, or near the midpoint of the whole 3-day festival. So it just seemed like a good way to get everyone balancing on an edge, because that's what that band does. And I think every year we're going to try and do something like that is something that you wouldn't quite expect to be. Although Brand X is one of those that winds up being included in prog-related shows, most people wouldn't expect it. And we've got a few ideas along similar lines for next year and the year after that grow out of the same idea of what Brand X was for us this year.
Before we move on to Sunday, I'm curious, what is Paul and Dave's Excellent Adventure?
So,
I love them.
People are salivating.
Yeah, so we some people out there know very well that we had a little bit of a problem this year trying to get our full slate of intended bands to play. We ran into some issues trying to get everything in order for IO Earth to come out here from England. Simply something that we did not do soon enough, so it's on our shoulders largely. That we could not get through the visa process in enough time. given IO Earth's very rightfully busy schedule. They're a very heavily sought after band. They had a lot of travel they had to do, so the timing just did not work. So they will be back next year. We've already agreed to that, so we will have IO Earth on stage next year in 2020. But when that happened, we made some changes to the way that our Saturday lineup was. We actually moved things around a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit, create a little more space. And then one of the things that we had done is that we had talked to Randy McStine and asked him to take his solo set, which was originally intended to be after Brand X, and to do it before Brand X. So that left us with a small spot that we could still fill prior to our big Saturday night Last Call live party. And we were thinking about what to do, and we kind of tried our best to make it a little bit of a contest of sorts on Facebook, drop hints about what we were thinking, and we got recommendations all over the map. You know, some people who made those recommendations for bands to put into this slot just ignored the fact that we said that it was starting at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night and that it was only 30 minutes long. So they would recommend bands that that deserve nothing less than 2 hours on stage at prime time, like we're going to do a 30-minute late night set. And it was all over the map. But ultimately, we kind of knew we had one that we, for lack of any other thing that would come up, we knew there was one that we thought would work. First of all, the Dave and Paul and Dave is Dave Bainbridge, currently playing with Life Signs, for those people who know that band. Also played with the Straubs most recently for a few years. His own band, Celestial Fire, as well as his prior work with Iona. Dave is a great guy and great guitar player, and he was going to be at the festival anyway as an attendee. He and his lovely girlfriend. So that was all. He was already going to be there, and then it came down to asking Dave, hey, this little tour that you and Paul are going on. Paul, of course, is Paul Bilatowitz, who is 1/3 of the Carl Palmer Legacy band, the ELP Legacy band. And Paul is the guitar player in that band. And so he and Dave put this little project together, and we're touring it here in the States in small venues right in the fall of this year. And so it just so happened that their little tour was ending about 6 or 7 days before Progstock. And so we invited them. Yeah, their big poster is that they're in a hot air balloon, so we somehow rerouted that sucker to come over to us. And they made a nice little splash about it, that they were basically going to crash Progstock, which they kind of did. We sort of invited them, but we didn't let the world know that we did. So, and they came and did 30 minutes of what was normally a 45 to 60 minute set that they had done on their tour prior. And what they do is very interesting. They're both very gifted, both guitar and keyboard players. So they could do whatever they want. Paul concentrated on guitar. Dave played both guitar and keys. And they have some interesting imagery behind them, which we put up on our projection screen. Some classic movies and from the silent era and others, and their music is meant to be enjoyed together with that visual experience. We actually have all of Progstock on video, as well as really good audio recordings, and we'll be releasing pieces of it.
Thank you.
But we have their performance in its entirety, and our video people did some live direction of the multi-cameras and did some really neat effects that we're going to bring to Paul and Dave's attention soon, because we think they need to release this and make it something that everyone can have. So it was a really fun little set. I think everyone who stuck around the late night on Saturday had a great time as a result.
And I love Paul Bialtowitz. He's super talented. He basically does the fret tapping technique, and so he plays like classical music on there. It's really interesting to watch, and he's fun to watch, and a super talented guy. And
and in the ELP Legacy band, his job is to basically cover Keith Emerson's parts on the guitar.
Yes, that is a completely instrumental set, so there's no vocals at all. It's amazing how they translated that, and actually Paul played with Eddie Van Halen, who's known for that type of tapping technique. So it's interesting to watch him play. And like I said, he'll play a classical piece, he'll play like a Beethoven piece on his guitar, and it sounds just like a full piano. It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, y'all. Well, I guess it's time for us to pick up on Sunday, and for that, we're going to add yet another panelist calling in from Chicago. You are from Chicago, right? No, you're not. You're from D.C. I'm dumb. Joining us from D.C. tonight, Mr. Professor Patrick Jackson.
That's me.
Thanks so much for joining us at at such a weird hour. So we are up to Sunday, and Sunday morning, a little group called the Cyberiam opened up the set. What can y'all tell us about that?
Well, so I met the bassist, Kovacs, at on one weekend, one of the Marillion weekends in Montreal this year. And so I'd bought their debut album then. And listening to that CD, it was like, wow, this is a great band, great music. They got lush layers of sounds, there's good, strong singing. But watching them live was a whole different experience, They've got this groove that, their bass line is amazing. And that really carries a lot of the songs. It carries you into the song and it kind of holds you there, whether it's a short 5-minute song or that ridiculous 20-minute butterfly effect, which was really, really good. So sonically, watching the show, I kind of found myself sitting in my seat and just kind of cocking my head and say, oh, you know what? This piece has that's a little bit of Tool that I hear, It's got that swampy bass line, or it's really got some Opeth, dare I say, in it, or, all the layers and the metal groove of a Dream Theater song, and even I heard kind of some melodies of Pink Floyd in there, from the guitarist, and amazingly they kind of made all of those little, pieces work together. They melded all those sounds, all those layers, and transitioned it into a song that kind of, for me, flowed well, and it sounded well. Sonically, it was collectively sonically sound. And what I found with many of the prog bands, and it was also the case with this one, is they're really better at the live shows, or they're, you get more out of the live show than they actually do with the recording. It's just there's so much more richness in a live show. And this was my first time seeing them live. And the acoustics in that theater and the way, the sound engineers did it, it was very well balanced for this band. And they delivered everything so well that you could hear basically all the individual musicians, Frank and Keith and Brian and Thomas. You could hear them well on their distinct instruments during the solos, but they jammed well together. I remember one song where Kovacs, the bassist, and Semple and Lucas, the guitarist and the keyboardist, were having this sort of interplay, or this volley within a song. Kovacs would play the bass line, and he kind of tag Semple, who then, did his little piece, and then he handed that torch to Lucas and keyboard, and Lucas has his keyboard that's kind of like a Jordan Rudess type keyboard, tilts,
it is
pivots, and
it is Jordan's, by the way.
Is it?
It is. That's from the Scenes from a Memory tour.
Yeah, I saw him in Dream Theater a month ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Jordan's keyboard. But and then I later found out he trained under Jordan, so it's probably not surprising to anyone that stylistically he's similar to that. But so it was a lot of fun, not just to hear, but also to watch their performance and see them playing in this sort of musical relay. So the production of that show was on point. They had this video playing in the background that was engaging and interesting, colorful, and it kind of kept the energy of the band up and the energy of the music up without being too distracting. Sometimes there's too much of a story going on that you want to follow that video rather than watch the band. But this was a nice balance, and I really appreciate a good production with a live performance. It makes it more memorable, when kind of all your senses are engaged in the show. So we had a lot. I mean, for me, some people just want to hear the music and they don't want the band to move at all, But for me, I like metal prog, so I like a lot of movement, a lot of action. So you had a lot of movement on the stage, from the video. But as musicians as well, they really, really worked the stage. Semple would come up front, work with Kovacs, and then he was really generous too, that he would move to the back and let the keyboardist and the bassist be showcased. So that was really nice to see that sharing of the stage, their engagement of the audience, but also they were so expressive in the way that they played, and you can see kind of their love for performing, their love for music, in their faces and their body language. And I think Joel, I don't know if he was the official Progstock photographer, but he did a great job of really capturing that in some of the photographs that I've seen this past week, of the band. It really, Joel's fantastic. And I've seen a lot of his work from many bands and many concerts, but I think some of the ones he took of this particular band are probably some of the best I've ever seen. And it's a combination of Joe's skill, but also the band's expressiveness, and their performance,
Yeah, Joel's all right, I guess.
Yeah, it's all right.
Look, come on. I'm going to say,
hey, Patrick,
Joel is a godsend for Progstock. We thank him so much for being involved.
I'll make sure he does not get that memo. Patrick, we haven't heard from you yet. What you got, dude?
Gotcha. I was going to just tag off of what Maria had just said. I mean, the thing that I found the most engaging about the Cyberiam live, and like Maria, I had met Brian at one of the Marillion weekends, and so I had known their debut album, and my daughter and I had been listening somewhat obsessively to Butterfly Effect in the car when I drive her up to work. When I'm going to work, I drive her up to school, and so she'd be like, "Hey, can we listen to Butterfly Effect?"
That's a long drive.
So, well, and we came, we specifically went up to Progstock this year we were only there for the day on Sunday, and we drove up specifically to see the Cyberiam and then other people who we were able to get to before we had to get back home here down to DC. And so we managed to get up there for that. And the two things I found really engaging about their live performance, Maria mentioned this, but I just want to expand on it a little bit. Unlike most lead singers, Keith Semple doesn't stand front and center. Right, so sometimes the lead singer for a band will stand up in the middle, and it visually that's where everything is sort of focused. Keith stands at the back, so when he is playing, and when he's singing, he's not actually down front. He's actually up back over to stage right of the drums, which is fascinating because it really creates a different kind of democratic atmosphere among the musicians. It's like, here are these four guys up there jamming, and it's not the singer and the backing band, which you can sort of get into that dynamic sometimes. Like, that's just not there. All four of these guys are just playing off of each other all the time. Right. And Maria had also mentioned some of the production that was going on behind. One of the songs that they played in particular, a song called My Occupation, they had a series of visuals which really underscored the story of the egomaniacal politician that's sort of running through that whole song. And they had all of these historical shots of combat and various kinds of proto-fascist things going on. Like, okay, so here's what happens when politics goes completely off the rails, because the whole song is a pun, right? It's not my occupation, the job. It's my occupation, I'm occupying your territory.
It had shades of Dream Theater, the scenes. Yeah.
Exactly. And then and one of the things I've always been most impressed by with the Cyberiam is precisely how inventive their lyrics are. So it's the lyrical wordplay in the kinds of things they put together. The song they close with, "Don't Blink," the Doctor Who-ish song, is marvelous because "Don't Blink" is both a specific reference that Doctor Who geeks will get, but also Semple utilizes it as a metaphor for a whole variety of things. But don't blink and you'll miss your life. So it's just really clever the way they put these things together. So. Absolutely amazing to see them live. So
and quite honestly, I think they stole the whole festival. There was so much buzz about them after that, and so many new fans, and that for me, I think they stole, because they were new to a lot of people as well. That was part of it. A lot of people have never heard of them. People have been kind of touting them for months and months and months. People that we know, but we've never seen them live, and the live really kind of brought it all home, that this is a great band and they're going to have a great future,
Literally everything that you guys have been saying about the Cyberiam makes them sound like something that I need to investigate. I'd never heard of this band until I put together the notes for tonight's episode.
Oh, yeah.
And so good. Literally everything that you guys have said makes me think, I really, really should check these guys out. Mark, you mentioned that they're a Chicago band.
Yeah, so they're from Chicago. I've seen them a dozen times probably, and they just added all those monitors that you saw on the show. I'm sure Tom will mention that they probably brought them with them. I don't think that those were, part of the set.
Yeah, they brought their 3 monitors that they normally use, but we replaced the center monitor with our huge projection screen.
Exactly. So, and these guys are great. I mean, I don't know if you guys know who Keith Semple is, but this guy's first song went gold. Okay, he's a pop star. He was in a boy band. He was in a band called One True Voice. He did a solo career. He's in a band called Seventh Heaven. He was back on The Voice. He was on American Idol.
Wow. He's a mover, yeah. Doesn't he have another band besides the Cyberiam as well?
Yeah, it's called Semple, and a couple other things. I'm not quite sure what he's touring it as right now, but it's so interesting you mentioned about how he doesn't take front and center, because this guy could be a super egotistical guy. You know what I'm saying? With but he loves progressive rock. As a matter of fact, before he got on American Idol, he has a Dream Theater tattoo, and they had to clear it with Dream Theater before he could get on the show.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on his wrist. I happened to be wearing a Dream Theater T-shirt, and he was like, "Oh, look, we match."
And so they had to call Dream Theater and say, "Can this guy, show his tattoo on American Idol?" And they go, "Not only can he show his tattoo, we want to meet him." So.
Nice.
Wow.
And so that's kind of another Dream Theater reference they have. But I think the one problem with their set was they started off with kind of maybe a kind of a brashy song for 11:30 on a Sunday or whenever it was. I really think maybe they could have come up with done like nostalgia, to start off. It's got a nice audio thing in to begin with, and they had this kind of clumsy. They got on stage very clumsily. You know what I'm saying? It was like, okay, they're up there. We're waiting for them to get their click track going or whatever so they could sync up with the video. And they probably could have done it easier with a different song.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was still so half asleep that I didn't notice.
You're saying that they didn't wake you up, Maria? What up with that?
They did. Once that bass line, that dun, 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 I was awake.
and we were literally, because there'd been an accident on I-95, so we were literally running into the theater as they were starting. So we didn't get any of any awkwardness. We felt like it was our awkwardness having, we're out of breath.
It's perfect.
But
well, I could tell you, look, when we negotiated where they would play in the festival, which, there's obviously many, many, many variables that most people don't even consider or know exist when you're trying to figure out how to balance a schedule. And there's things that feed into, forced decisions on where bands are going to play in the schedule. But when we talked about the Cyberiam being on Sunday morning, I mean, look at the first band every one of these days, right? I mean, Phideaux from Friday that could headline a festival themselves, Jane Getter waking you up with forced coffee in your eyes and your ears. And then the Cyberiam, I mean, Mark, I think it's almost a good thing that they came out and beat the hell out of you right from the very start, because that's the whole point. Wake you up. You're in the third rung of the marathon. If you did not sleep enough before, you're not getting any now.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that, I love these guys. I couldn't stay for all Sunday because I had to be at work on Monday morning at 9. I could have left Saturday very easily or early Sunday morning, but I stayed there and I watched their set, and I drove from 1 p.m. to midnight home just so I could see their set that I saw 5 times already before. So definitely check out this band if you haven't. And if you want to get somebody into prog and they like Doctor Who, give them Don't Blink. Give them Don't Blink. I'll tell you, a lot of people in Chicago found out about this band because they knew his boy band and they like Doctor Who. And so they listened to this, and now they're buying prog rock records all over the place.
I found that Doctor Who reference surprising because you look at these guys and they're playing metal. I mean, it's mostly metal. And then there's this Doctor Who song, which is like, what? Yeah.
It's just a reference, really. It has a lyric in there that says, if I had a TARDIS, I would explore the galaxy. And that's pretty much about it,
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, cool. I really appreciate the recommendation, y'all. I think I know what I'm getting my kid for Christmas. Cool. So like right after, well, not right after, because you guys do the whole meet and greet and everything immediately after the set. But the set that followed the Cyberium was Rachel Flowers with Michael Sadler from Saga. Patrick, what'd you think of that?
So I had heard Rachel Flowers' name bandied around in sort of different prog circles before, but I'd never had the opportunity to see her perform. And so I thought, okay, well, I don't really quite know what to expect here. And just her playing was so gorgeous. Mm-hmm. Absolute, just the sense of melody as she sits at the piano, and just it just flowed. So it's absolutely lovely stuff. And you could have heard a pin drop in that auditorium. I mean, it was this nice sort of intimate set, which I really enjoyed. And I had not been, I had no idea sort of what they were going to do, and just listening to Sadler kind of run through a few songs there was great. But when they got to that cover of Nights in White Satin,
wow, yeah.
that was heartbreakingly beautiful. That was just. I mean, I'm sitting there in the back of the auditorium. I was thinking, because I needed to go out and find my daughter, but I was waiting because they started playing this. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on a second. She'll be fine at the merch desk for a second. So we're waiting, and I'm just sitting there, and it's like I couldn't leave. I was just sitting there watching and just spellbound. It was so. It was gorgeous. Absolutely.
That's actually a reprise of them doing it last year when Michael was a solo act for us last year.
Really?
But one thing I'll say, but one thing I'll say is that when they first put that together, the whole idea of doing Nights in White Satin before Progstock 2018, Michael mentioned the idea to Rachel and to Jeannie, and Rachel said sure. And Rachel sent him the track of her playing, and it was the track, the great piano part of that, and then it got to the end of the song where Rachel recreates the orchestral ending of Nights in White Satin by herself on the piano. And if you find it on YouTube, it'll blow you away. but she sent it to him, and when he got it, he called her up, and he said, "So, how many pianos did you have playing on that when you mixed that and put it together?" And she's like, "There was no mix; it was me by myself."
Yeah,
on
her
one
translation
piano.
of that was amazing. She translated the orchestral piece into a piano piece, and you could almost hear the orchestra coming out of this piano. It was beautiful, and Sadler's voice is just, oh my goodness. I mean, he has sharpened himself over the years, and he is just so refined in his singing and strong, and very strong.
Having seen them do that performance last year as well, I obviously expected them to knock it out of the park when they did it again this year, but for me personally, since I'm a huge Eddie Jobson fan, the rendition of Rendezvous 602 they did was absolutely incredible for me as well. I don't know how people took it. I don't know if people recognized the song. Some people did, obviously, because I heard some applause when Michael started the first lyric. But again, it's another example of Rachel can do anything, and she's invited any year to play. I don't care what she plays. She's there every year.
Yeah. She reminded me in some ways of listening to a Tori Amos concert, right? Where you never know what she's gonna sort of jump out with, but whatever it is, she puts her own spin on it, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I get the feeling with her that it's the same level of talent and the same kind of versatility. So she's definitely someone who I did not know well before, but now I'm definitely going to be seeking out. And I see her name on things, and I will want to make sure that I go to them to try to see what she's up to.
So, Professor Patrick, hi, this is Tom. How are you?
Hey.
So one thing I'll say, if you haven't seen it, go out on YouTube and look for her performance of Tarkus from Progstock 2018.
Oh, that's right, Tarkus. Yes, she did Tarkus.
Her, a microphone, and the Fazioli piano, and oh my lord!
And that's
she did
it.
all of it. Yeah, 22 minutes of pure bliss.
Wow!
All right, I'm googling that. For sure, immediately. Wow, that sounds excellent.
Yes.
That sounds excellent. My favorite thing about these festivals is finding people that you sort of didn't already know, and then like, okay, now I need to go check these people out. So,
yeah,
good stuff.
Sometime last year we did an episode on how many bands, especially in metal, use backing tracks when they perform live. And what you guys are saying that Rachel did to Nights in White Satin with the orchestral part, where she just like reinterpreted it for solo piano. That's the sort of thing that I wish more bands would do on stage when they have, like, say, an orchestra that is such a big part of their sound. Instead of piping it in, if you could find a way to do it live, that I think demands a lot more respect.
Sure.
Yeah. And honestly, I think her lack of sight probably helps her in that sense, that she's able to kind of capture all that and translate it through her fingers into, because she doesn't have the benefit, I guess, or maybe the hindrance of having learned music, the notes and keys, and she hears it and she just translates it into her fingers. Her fingers are moving everywhere. Her posture is gorgeous on the piano. I mean, my piano teacher was always slapping me around, because posture. Rachel is gorgeous. She's a gorgeous player, and
she is so incredibly gifted. And you're probably right that it's the thing that happens when you don't have one of the five senses, and what happens to heighten your others. Just for walk into an elevator with Rachel Flowers, and she will tell you what key the elevator's in.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. Wow.
Cool. So following that set with Rachel and Mr. Sadler, a gentleman named Joe Deninzen stepped up with Stratusfurious. How'd that go, Patrick?
So I had never heard them before until at Get It Marillion weekend. There was a guy who had some CDs of theirs and was playing stuff, and I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of neat." So went, picked it up, and so when I noticed that they were playing after the Cyberiam set, I was like, "Oh, good, this is going to be nice. We're going to be able to go. We can actually stay there for some of the time." I was completely blown away by the energy that he brought. Right, it's like, okay, so I'm up here and I'm playing my electric fiddle, but he was all over the place. I mean, he was jumping around. He comes out in the audience at one point. Just the energy that was sort of flowing off of the set was just fun. It was just fun.
I'll tell you, and Joe's a lot of fun to see at a bar. By the way, when you see that band at a bar, I know it sounds kind of weird, but he'll go out into the audience and he'll lay down on a pool table. He'll do whatever it takes when he's playing that fiddle to make you enjoy a show.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's clear that you can always tell when a musician is just having a lot of fun doing what they do, and he was obviously just having a ball. And it's impossible, if you're any kind of fan of this music, to not be sort of taken away by this like wave of ebullience when people are just really up there enjoying themselves. And he was just having a lot of fun, and it was great. It was a rockin' set. Yeah,
and Joe played for us last year in 2018. He did one of our late night sets on Saturday night in the secondary building that we had our late night event in last year. It was basically just a rehearsal room, and that set again. That's a set where Fernando Perdomo joined him for some of it as well, and they jammed together. And
Fernando and Joe in the same space.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Joe joined Fernando's set because Fernando played after Joe at last year's after party with his Out to Sea band. And so we knew when we signed Joe last year, it was kind of a late addition to last year because scheduling wasn't sure it was going to work out. We weren't sure if they could do it, and we could fit them in due to many other commitments that Joe has, because Joe is very, very active as a fiddler. He's played recently with The Who as part of their string section.
Whoa!
He produced the strings that are part of the Renaissance show when he does it with an orchestra. So he's there leading the string section, and he's done so many. He played with Bruce Springsteen recently. He's done so many things. Yeah, wow. But so he's busy all the time. The man is a slaving musician. He's constantly working. So in last year, it worked out that we wound up putting him into a late night spot. But from the very beginning, I said, Joe, you play late night for me this year, and you're going to have a stage set next year. And I think it was the single best decision we made from one year to the next. I generally don't like to repeat. We don't want to repeat bands. There are others that do that, and we don't want to kind of make it the show where there's always a repeat, with the notable exception of Rachel Flowers, which I will once again say is invited every year. She can play the xylophone for all I care.
So what are you trying to say, Tom?
Hey, but
Randy McStine, bring him all the time too.
he has been every year in one
exactly.
one way or another involved with other acts. So, but yeah, bringing Joe back was absolutely the rest of the audience who couldn't stay up last year had to see Stratusferius play, and so we just had to do it.
No, it's good stuff. And really made me, that was about all the festival we were able to be there for, because then I had to turn around and drive back to D.C. to bring my daughter back as school the next day. But really, having out the whole way back, we're saying, we need to figure out a way to go for more days than just half a day next year. We need to go for more of this stuff. Because
there's a reason why we chose Columbus Day weekend for this. So we wanted to find a holiday in the fall where people might have it off of school, especially in public sector jobs. So we were hoping that would help. But I guess...
Well, the thing is that people, some districts and localities have moved away from that now, so that now Columbus Day is no longer a kind of holiday in the same way. So certainly in Maryland, that wasn't a day off school, and I had to go back and teach. We're a private university. We had class in the morning, but. Right. But definitely having gone and having, the thing my daughter really appreciated the most about the festival was just sort of the atmosphere, being able to be there, listen to bands that she hadn't heard before, and point things out, and like, okay, so I'd like to get this, I'd like to figure this band out, I'd like to buy a copy of that. So we ended up with a bunch of CDs that we brought home that she's been listening to. It's good exposure. It's good, and the other thing I really liked about it, as and it was. I had a slight moment of trepidation, like, okay, I'm going to bring my 16-year-old daughter to like a rock festival. Is this going to be like a safe environment? And it was absolutely fantastic. It was a big family. It was here we are. This is great. So, yeah, I figure, that may have happened at some point, but not, when we were there. Wasn't going on, but it was very safe. It was very nice and a good sort of family atmosphere for the thing, and I really appreciated that. It's definitely something we want to look into coming back to next year. So
we're not Lollapalooza or Warped Tour, so you don't have anything to worry about.
I want to hear about the mosh pit.
There was mosh and mud involved, so there we go.
You started it.
I'm sorry. I'm bad. It was a very respectable festival.
By the way, just because I don't want to, I know Patrick has to leave soon, but Maria, were you involved in this year's Women of Prague photo opportunity?
I was all over the place, and I completely missed that. I was socializing, and I didn't get word of it, honestly,
Oh, well, and they did it twice, I think. So talking about the spirit of the festival and the way we try to create the atmosphere that we have, that's one of the things of it. And we pride ourselves a lot on the fact that there's a tremendous female audience for this music. Yeah. That,
quite a bit,
it's always, if you look on social media and you look in other places, that people get, at this point, they get flambéed for bringing this up. The whole thing of expecting the Prague audience to be largely male. Whether or not that's the case in certain shows that you go to or whatever, the old joke of there's never a line at the ladies' room at a Prague show, blah, 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 blah. But there's so many women who enjoy so many parts of the Prague landscape of music.
I'm glad I'm part of this podcast then.
Yeah, and it's great that you are. And so it's gotten to the point where, and this actually started on the cruise that actually you say, Maria, we don't want to say too much about, but it's there, it exists, and it's a great event. It started there where the women who were all that would get the message, because apparently some didn't get the message, but they try to get together for a Women in Prague shot, and they've been doing that every year since we started in 2017, and I know they did it twice this year. It's gotten to the point now where I'm going to make sure that we make it part of the festival schedule. And we're actually going to announce it and make it clear as best we can to everyone that it's going on, so that we can get a lot more involvement in it.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
No, it's great. That's great. No, certainly it's the sort of thing that I appreciate. I appreciate just both as like a human being. Like, yes, this is not music that is, or a scene that is sort of specifically gendered, but I also especially appreciate it as a father of a daughter. Right, where this is like, okay, no, she's not going to be the only girl in the crowd, and that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So,
right. And Patrick, did you happen to experience any of the stuff that was going on at Bob Moog Foundation Park across the street from the theater?
We heard a little bit of it as we were kind of walking back and forth, because we'd ended up parking down the street and had to keep Brent back to put coats in the car, so I sort of listened to it a little bit. I didn't really have a good sense of what was going on, but some of the the sounds were quite intriguing. So I never really quite got a sense of what that exactly was. But
yeah,
it was neat.
So one of the major exhibitors at the festival this year, and we hope for many years to come, was Michelle Moog, Bob Moog's daughter, who runs the Bob Moog Foundation. So they were a large presence there, and not only did they have a table in the lobby where they were showing everything about her father's legacy, but also Michelle actually brought two elements of our backline. She brought a couple of Moog devices for bands to play for us,
Nice.
but she also had the park across the street, which we dubbed Bob Moog Foundation Park for the weekend. And it was basically just meant to be an outdoor sort of live pickup thing. So she had a bunch of theremins out there that people could try out and play themselves.
I missed that. Wow.
I wish I had known that. Oh my
I know.
goodness.
Patrick.
Right.
Wow.
Right. She had some other Moog equipment out there, and then Robert Schindler, otherwise known as Roby One, was out there with a bunch of his keyboards as well. So he was doing a lot of performances out there at the park, and also our Friday night late night German duo, Melanie Mal and Martin Schnella, were out there doing some playing and some jamming out there, and a bunch of other people, because our audience, the audience for this music is rife with musicians. So many audience members were out there singing and playing and jamming. We're going to keep that idea every year now. This is the first year we did it, but it's such a hit. We're going to have that going on every year now. And please check it out. Next time you come up.
Oh, definitely. I mean, both my daughter and I sing as well, so we may jump in if there's a pickup performance going on out there in the park at some point. Now that we sort of know that's there, it's good. I mean, honestly, when we decided we were going to come up for Progstock, we did not know an awful lot about the festival. What we mostly know is the Cyberiam is going to be playing. Okay, cool. Let's drive up and see them. Now that we are in the know, now we're sort of circling that on our calendar for next year and saying, okay, let's see if we come up for another couple days.
Tell 150 of your close friends, and
well, I've got 5 close friends that actually listen to some of this stuff.
Each of them will tell
maybe I can sell 2 of them. Exactly.
Each of them will tell
see if we can sell a couple.
And so on. Right. Right.
Try to broadcast it out there a little bit. So
sure.
Yeah. No, good stuff. But no, it was a lovely time, even though we were only there for a little while. I wish we could have been there for longer. And doing my sort of pre-festival research. I mean, I'd never really listened to much of Phideaux before, and then I went and got the latest album, and then have been working my way backwards through the catalog. And I mean, that's some fantastic stuff. And I'm kicking myself. I'm like, gosh, I wish we'd gone up 2 days earlier to hear them perform. Mm-hmm. But at least if nothing else, there's an opening that bands that I wouldn't have necessarily gone into. Now I've been able to get a little bit of a spur to go and research a little bit. And it's one of the nice things about a festival like this. And I'm hoping, I don't know. I mean, I know it's getting hard for overseas bands because of the weird tax restrictions in the United States now. But I hope that for next year or for future years, I hope that the festival can get some of the good European bands over still.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Cool. I mean, I'll put in my little annual plug, or my plug all the time, for the band that I would love to see, but I can never get over to England to see when they're actually performing, is this Winter Machine. Those guys are fantastic. The second album of theirs is absolutely extraordinary. It's got this.
I'm writing that down.
It's got this sort of old Genesis 12-stringy vibe to it, which is really cool. But it's got also this very interesting kind of heavier edge to the bass, especially. So really, really good band.
I will tell you
Tower
that
of
band,
Clocks is.
That band is already on our very long laundry list of bands that have been brought by the band committee for consideration. Obviously, I don't have final decisions yet, and I'm not going to make any promises. But that band is one of the bands on our list. So
that's cool. That would make it even more likely that we would show up for a few days. But obviously, that's not this whole reason to do it. But they're a great band. But it's that kind of thing, like bands that people might have even heard the name once or twice, but haven't had a chance to really sort of look into a little bit. That even them being on the festival, people being on the festival program that I hadn't listened to much, even though I didn't get a chance to see them perform, I've gone back and done my homework a little bit. So I've acquired some Discipline albums that I didn't have previously, and we'll be taking a listen there. So I feel like that's been it's that kind of exposure, which is nice, just sort of getting a sense of those parts of the prog scene that I'm not as familiar with. So.
We did our Prog Power USA wrap episode a couple weeks ago, and we spent a really, really good length of time talking about the culture of the festival. And one of the big takeaways from that discussion was that it is an incredibly safe and welcoming and lots of fun place for the ladies and for the kids. I mean, there are people that bring their children. I'm going to be taking my own child there in the next couple years, and that's something. I see these parallels between Prog Power and Progstock, and I'm like, dude. I mean, this sounds like it could be another home away from home for me.
No, it's good stuff. One more thing before I got to run. I have to put in a plug for the fact that Paul Whitehead was there with some of his art. And the fact that I get to have a conversation with the dude who drew the Foxtrot cover is mind blowing. And so I acquired a few of his pieces, which are currently adorning the walls of my office. And that was just another nice benefit. Totally unexpected. I had not expected to find Paul Whitehead there, and there he was, and it touched me. And
Paul's another person who is welcome to be a part of our festival every year. He's been there since the beginning. We did kind of give a little miss when we discussed Saturday to the fact that, not only did Paul do a live painting in the theater for Phideaux set on Friday, but he also did one during Brand X's headline set on Saturday. And that one was auctioned off to quite a happy owner of that painting as well.
Gotcha. Neat stuff. All right, I got to go, guys. This has been fantastic. I have enjoyed this a great deal. And Maria, it's always lovely to chat with you.
Absolutely, Professor Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, I'm sorry that you weren't able to be there for the whole weekend, and I'm also really sorry that you weren't able to join us for the whole stretch, but I really, really appreciate the time that you've given us.
If nothing else, if I'm able to sort of recommend to more people to go and listen to the Cyberiam, then I feel like I've done my good deed for the day. So
Cool, you're done with your good deeds today.
Excellent. All right. Take care, folks.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Who wants to take Nektar? I think Tom has a few things to say about them.
Sure. I'll start out by saying that Nektar was the third and final set where Paul Whitehead was out in the theater doing a live painting of his impressions of the Nektar set. And that painting also went home to a happy person who won it through a silent auction. So Nektar. What is there to say about Nektar? This is a band that obviously has been around for a very long time. This is coming upon their 50th anniversary. That's a number that another band recently has reached, namely King Crimson. Mm-hmm. So we're talking in that era of the world. Nektar being one of those interesting bands that was a British band based in Germany. So they were all British, but they all lived in Germany, and that's where they did all of their initial music making and their initial living. I'm told that the Beatles did some of that too early on. They did a lot of work in Germany.
Yeah, they did. I actually used to have an LP of them doing "Sie liebt mich, she loves you."
No. So Nektar, being largely known as a band from the very late '60s and early '70s, with a very psychedelic side to what we know as prog, and having a very immersive show experience where it's not just the music, which is enthralling, in some cases trance-inducing, psychedelic, but also bluesy, and all sorts of things tied up together in what they produce sonically, but coupled with a light and visual presentation. Combination of lighting effects as well as projection and other interesting effects. And they kind of became the staple for that in the 70s, producing very, very, multiple sensory jobs, gigs. But then that band has a storied history, like any other band in rock that went through the 60s, 70s and such. had its ups and downs, had its internal health battles and other sorts of problems. They came back with a vengeance in the early 2000s, coming back together with some original members, specifically with Ron Howden on drums and with Roy Albrighton on guitar and lead vocals, which many people believe is, or feel is the sound of Nektar, and that's very true to a large degree. And they did a run of shows as they came back together. They also did some of the cruises. But then, unfortunately, Roy passed away a few years back. So, interestingly enough, the members of Nektar, the remaining members of Nektar, all, for whatever reason, wound up gravitating to New Jersey as a place to live. I don't know why. It just so happens.
It's an old German settlement. Nobody knows that.
Right. Okay. So, and I had gotten a chance to meet Ron Howden years back when Nektar did play on Cruise to the Edge a few years back while Roy was still alive. And so, we'd always talked about, Ron and I, for years about, we would get together and just catch up on things or whatever. And, what's going to happen with Nektar? Where's it going to go, especially after Roy passed away? And so over a few years, it became clear that, Ron really wanted to do something. And it really came down to one other founding member of Nektar who also lives in New Jersey, wanting to get back in the saddle, as it were. He was a successful professional running his own business, and eventually, got the itch to come back to music. And so when he retired and sold his company, he decided to go back into it full bore. And that's Derek Mo Moore, the original bass player for Nektar. And so once Mo and Ronnie got together, it was clearly written on the wall it was going to happen. It was just a question of when. And they put together quite a great cast of characters, people, all of whom in this band have been involved with Nektar in its past history at various points. And if anyone does their homework, they'll see that. With the exception of one member who's brand new, the other members have been there involved for quite some time. Randy Dembo as the other bass player, who filled in quite often for Nektar in the 2000s when they were touring, because Derek wasn't involved in the band at the time. Rich CHLANDA on vocals and guitar had also toured with Nektar at times and done a lot of songwriting with them. In fact, the new album that they've produced, and is about to come out in January, I believe, is largely material that Rich CHLANDA and Mo had written with the band back in the late 70s. So this is legitimate, honest-to-goodness Nektar material. This is not something they just decided to scribble on a chalkboard a few months ago. And so when it came together, it was just a question of whether it was going to come together and get working on all cylinders fast enough to be a part of our festival this year. And fortunately, it did. Mo had some other tricks up his sleeve. He threw in the fact that a lot of the original people who were involved with Nektar way back from the beginning were still involved behind the scenes from production and others, but also for the light show. So they consider this gentleman to be a legitimate member of the band, and I think it's correct to say so. That's Mick Brockett. He was the original lighting guy who came up with the whole light and visual part of the Nektar show from the 70s, and he was right there with us. In fact, his light show was going on right in the back of the theater, right in front of the soundboard, if anyone noticed that, up in the loge of the theater. He was there with, I believe, some of the original projectors that are on the order of 40 to 50 years old that were up there. Got them working, as well as some other additional newfangled stuff to make it brighter. But so that whole show that they put on, this was the first performance of Nektar, the newly reformed Nektar. For a first performance, holy cow. They pulled out all the old favorites. They pulled out 2 or 3 of the songs off of the new album that they just scream Nektar. These songs are right in lockstep with what you would expect Nektar to have produced right back in the late 70s and early 80s if they had continued. It was an absolutely stunning performance. It was a heavy lift for everyone involved, the band members as well as us, to make it happen. But we all knew from when this first came up it's kind of a pie in the sky idea one night when Ron Howden and I had dinner 3 years ago now. we all knew that we wanted to make it happen and would pull out all the stops to make it happen. And I'm so glad that we did. It was a rough, hard climb, but boy, what a reward to get out of it. And now they're about to tour in early January and February. They're going to start in the U.S. and go over to Europe. So Nektar is back, folks. So check them out.
It must be really cool to know that you might have had something to do with that.
Yeah, it does feel cool. I mean, I don't really know how much because, to be honest with you, it was an idea and we talked about it. But once Mo wanted to do it, the whole thing is driven by the sheer willpower that Mo Moore has. So he really made it happen. So, but yeah, it's kind of neat to have seen it happen, or at least been inside while it was happening.
Yeah, and I think they have 10 more shows this year, or next on 2020, ending in Evansville, Illinois, some little town in the middle of Illinois. So,
not far from you.
yeah, that's right. And then they're playing, I think, 3 shows in New York and a couple others as well.
They're playing at the Iridium.
Yeah,
in New York.
That's right.
It's going to be great.
Cool. And then the festival.
They're also playing at the New Jersey Prog House. So that's going to be good too.
Well, that's right.
Cool. And then a little band called Saga followed Nektar.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good get for you guys. Good job.
I think so. I mean, as excited as I've been about all the other bands, and for good reason, you know, especially just talking about Nektar and some of the other bands that were my bucket lists to have, like I mentioned, Salem Hill and Discipline. Saga was, it's sometimes you walk through life and there's something that just falls right into place for you. If you're fortunate to have that happen, maybe once in your life. This is kind of one of those. It had a little history because through connections from part of our festival volunteer team, we had met and become friends with Michael Sadler and his family last year. And you know, that started from the Cruise to the Edge and other experiences that Saga was present on. And so it turned into Michael coming last year in 2018 to be a solo performer, and he basically did his first solo band performance at Progstock 2018, which did a lot of, you know, Saga material, but also some of his solo material and some other things. And if folks remember, last year when he put that together, he needed a band because he didn't have one, and so one of the bands who was already playing Progstock in 2018, an absolutely wonderful California juggernaut known as Enchant.
Nice.
Yes. They got a phone call from Michael Sadler, who said basically, "Hey guys, I need a band." And I don't know if it was Doug or Ed who said it first. Where do we go? When do we do it? Let's do it. So
it was probably Ed Platt. Yeah.
It's probably Ed. Yeah. So most of Enchant, Ed and Doug and Bill, they became the backing band for Michael Sadler last year, and then just to put the cherry on top, they had Jimmy Keegan as their drummer. So that band came together and had to learn all that set, but they did it wonderfully. And that's the same year Enchant played as well. So they had all that extra music to learn, but they were obviously in heaven because, you know, Saga is one of their favorite bands, obviously. Yeah. So that, you know, Michael got to experience the festival and some of the things that even Patrick was talking about, kind of the other parts of this festival and how it feels. And so he felt like it was good to bring to the band, to Saga. And he did, and we worked it all out. And it was really, really cool. They were all really great to work with. I want to make a special shout out to Michael's family, Gwen Sadler, his wonderful wife, who's always been a friend of ours, and very, very helpful. We're partners in crime. We love it. To their son, Saren, who is an absolutely wonderfully gifted kid, who got his first chance to play on stage with his father last year at Progstock 2018. That was a great little moment for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, they helped us make this happen. And it's so, I really value the friendship and the real honest feeling, the real camaraderie here, because this was another one of those things where Michael didn't have to do any of this. He didn't have to suggest it to the band. He didn't have to try and put his neck out, if you will, to suggest to the rest of his bandmates this was going to be a thing.
And Saga fans across the U.S. are so grateful that you guys did this. Because
I mean, they hadn't played U.S. mainland 13, 14 years.
Yes, it was quite a coup d'etat, it really was.
And they certainly didn't play a festival in the U.S. for nearly 30 years. They always seem to go down to Puerto Rico, but I don't blame them because it's great. But they seem to have a lot of fans there, or at least people who go there to see them. And they're obviously huge in Germany. But yeah, this was just, you're right, it was a big get for us. And I hope my luck hasn't run out. Let's put it that way, because that was a big one to spend a lot of luck on. But the performance itself was absolutely stellar. We worked really hard to get the video presentation that they wanted working with it. We made sure we had all the equipment that they needed. We actually had a little bit of an issue because there was a little bit of a snafu. These things happen, we're human. Where we didn't have the second keyboard for Jim. So we had to kind of scramble the day before their performance to find another local backlight provider that had it, because the particular keyboards he likes to use are kind of hard to come by. So, but we fixed it. We got on top of it.
It didn't have to get shipped in from a museum or anything, did it?
No. It wasn't like the Rocket Scientist one. No, this was just grabbing a backlight provider in the city. But we had someone from the team. Big shout out to John Yarger from our team, also from the Prog House in New Jersey. He ran out to New Manhattan to grab it for us, and that was really key. Very, very helpful.
Man, so, what's the final verdict? I mean, what's y'all's impressions on Progstock 2019?
It was fantastic. It was my first Progstock. It will definitely not be my last. It was the complete package of, great music, great lineup, great people, meeting friends that friendships that you've created from going to other festivals and other shows. A very nice, welcoming family atmosphere. The location is excellent. Everything's so accessible and just a wonderful. Rahway is a really nice place. I've never been to Rahway, so I really loved it. I loved the whole thing, and I'll definitely be back next year.
Awesome. Mark, what do you got?
Well, I think it's everything I look for in a festival, really. Good music, good friends, very great community. And one thing I like about this festival, that if you don't want to rent a car, you can fly in and you can take the train, and you don't need a car, so that saves you a little money.
Yep.
And I think more festivals should do that, or be in locations where you can do that.
Yep.
And and plus Tom's a great guy. I can't tell you how good he's been to me, because I seriously can't, because then other people expect that of him, and I don't want to put that on him. So
no, he's terrible.
and so that is it.
Yes.
I think everybody's been telling you guys, I'm sure, and I've seen it online, of thanking you, you guys for all the work that you did, and your volunteers as well, who are very skilled. I've seen them around the circuit in different festivals and such. They know what they're doing, and they help you guys kind of carry the whole show. And to me, I don't know what you feel about it, but I think it was a very successful festival.
Yeah.
Wow.
And realistically, Tom, I mean, it's how much easier would your life be if you didn't have to do this? I mean, so.
Well, it's gotten to the point where I think I want to go to some anonymous meeting and get up in front and say, "Hi, I'm Tom, and I'm a festival organizer."
Yeah. But it's been 2 weeks since my last festival.
Right. Like I'll say, I've been at Progstock for 3 years, and I hope I'm at another one. How's that? But yeah, this not anywhere near enough can be said about not only my partner in crime, Ann Rinaldi, but also the team of people that are, from the people who head departments, if you will, to the people who work within those departments, if you will, on the volunteer team. Some of the other partners of ours who are not necessarily volunteers because they might be paid professionals, but they do so at tremendously reduced rates to help us out, because this is not a money-making proposition. This is really about producing a festival that we hope to break even one year so that we can keep it going, but it's not meant to be anything more really than a passion project and a labor of love for myself and Ann and the team that put it together. So when you see how we've worked really hard to make certain aspects of this festival enjoyable experiences for people, it's because it's kind of us. We want this to be what we would enjoy, and we want to share it with as many people as we can without losing our shirts in the process. But that's where this comes from. It all comes from the heart. It's what we want. We want everyone to have a good time. That is kind of like the time we'd want to have if we went to someone's festival. So, every little detail sometimes is just us coming up with, hey, let's do this because everyone's going to enjoy it, even if sometimes they don't cost money to do. Sometimes it's just thinking in another direction. Sometimes fans like yourselves or attendees like yourselves bring ideas to us that we try to figure out how to bring in. I mean, Mark, you and I have had conversations about this before. Maria, you and I have started to have conversations like this.
Yes.
We're open to as many ideas as can fit without us going stark raving mad, implementing them all. And be careful what you ask for, because if it's a great idea, we might ask you to be a volunteer and run it for us.
Anytime.
Right. So,
Yeah.
So Sunday night was kind of our last blast after party. We do that. We didn't really do a big one in the first year, and in the second year, our Sunday night after party became Eddie Jobson's special private party. But this year we did a typical Sunday night party to kind of be like the last farewell, if you will, for friends who were going to leave and go home the next day to kind of have their last little blowout. I liken it to the last day of Prog Day, where everyone hangs out at the hotel pool until 6 a.m. when they have to figure out how to drive home now. So for Sunday night, we had a great band that deserves to be on a festival slot list and on stage wherever they can get to be. And that's Kinetic Element, with Mike Visaggio leading that band from Richmond, Virginia. And it was a great set. It was done again at the Waiting Room Restaurant. They had they had 2 sets actually. And in between Kinetic Element's 2 sets, Valdez played again, this time still acoustic because, as I said earlier, their drummer had broken his foot. So that's kind of how we rounded out Sunday. And for those, were you all there? Did any of you stay to Sunday night?
Yes, I was there at the waiting room.
Okay, so
for the party too, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know. The only thing I'll say is I thank Anne Rinaldi and my mother and stepfather from the bottom of my heart for doing what they did. It wasn't really my birthday. My birthday comes up in a few weeks on November 19th, when I'll be 50, if I make it that far. But I guess, Anne's thought was, where else would there be a couple hundred friends?
Your closest friends, yeah.
So it was a great little surprise to walk into. I really appreciate it. I wasn't really ready for it, and I was obviously a wrung-out washcloth by then. So I hope I didn't slight anybody or offend anybody or do anything silly like that. But
it was great, and it was a nice kind of exclamation point to the festival as to we're a family. We're a family that loves good music and the same kind of music, and we're all here together to celebrate your pre-birthday with you. So it was a really nice way to end it.
I really appreciated it. And the other thing that we could circle back to, and you can decide if you want to edit it out or move where it is or what have you.
Give me what you got.
Is for our Saturday late night. Since last year, we've had this new strategy of not doing every single late night party at the restaurant. So last year we broke it up and we did our Saturday night at the secondary theater building that is just down the street from the main theater, which is where Fernando Perdomo and Joe Didinzon played last year. But this year we chose to do something similar. We were originally going to do it in that secondary theater building. And what we were doing was something that we called Last Call Live, which is a smaller version of an event that happens on Cruise to the Edge every year. Late at night after all the bands have played, there's a lounge somewhere on the boat where music continues for another 4 or 5 hours until 5 a.m. And that's called Late Night Live. That's an organized jam where the passengers on the cruise from many months before the cruise sign up to play songs. They vote for songs, and they sign up to lead a band of people who will come together and say, yes, I'll play guitar on that. Yes, I'll sing for that. And they then, without really knowing each other, it's a band that comes out of nowhere to play classic prog tunes. And they hardly ever, if at all, rehearse. They just come together. They do their own woodshedding. They don't really live near each other, so they come together on the cruise and they play it. And that's exactly what we did late on Saturday night, from about roughly 12:30 or 1 a.m. until about 4 a.m.
Jeez.
And this year, we intended on doing that in the secondary building, like I said, which has a small 200-seat theater. But because there was a little bit of a scheduling snafu, the Performing Arts Center folks had scheduled that building to be used for another event, specifically a musical. And so in a scramble, they basically said, well, hey, wait a minute. You're already in the theater. You already have all your backline. You already have your sound. Why don't you just stay in the theater and do it there? And I stood up out of my chair and said, Eureka. Absolutely, let's do that. Why didn't we think of that before? So with the theater's help, with the Performing Arts Center director, Brian Remo's help, he brought in he hired a fresh crew to work with us, because you can't work the theater crew for 24 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And with a fresh crew, we basically took the stage over, and right after Paul and Dave's excellent adventure, we reset the stage for Last Call Live, and they played of the 18 songs that they intended to play, with 3 to 4 minute changeovers between songs, so you can imagine the complexity. They got in about 14 or 15 of those songs with roughly 4 minute changeovers, and it was a great experience. And of course, as I said earlier before, Rachel Flowers was all over this thing. She was playing piano or keyboards for a great rendition of Trilogy, which you'll find on YouTube somewhere. And she played guitar for Comfortably Numb, which was absolutely...
Wow, please, just stop.
Yeah. So you check this all out on Facebook. We have it recorded. I believe both Joel and Eric Nielsen recorded it. So this will be available at some point.
Wow.
I have to add, and not to plug the other, festival, but on the late night live at that festival, and Rob Brutz, I don't know if he was helping organize this one for you, but
yes, this was all Rob Brutz and Book.
This type of stuff is his baby. He's really good at organizing it and producing it and getting everything into place. But he also does a late night live on the cruise. But what's cool about that is you have all these artists also on the cruise, and sometimes they'll go on stage with the amateurs, quote unquote amateurs or non-professional. That's not the right word anyway, but non-artists, and they will play. Like you have John Davidson come in and play with the other, cruisers and sing a yes song, or you have
Jeff Downs sit down with them. There was tons of that. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's so cool.
It is so cool. You're performing with your heroes, and I almost said the F word, but you're performing with your heroes.
Yes.
So it's a really one of a kind type of environment,
And I think the way it turned out this year, I think we'll batten down some hatches and tighten up a few things to make it a little bit more smooth, but I think we'll keep it going. I think this worked out really well.
This sounds like an unbelievable weekend. I think I'm going to put this one on my bucket list.
Don't put it on your bucket list. Put it on your to-do list.
It's on my to-do list.
Yeah.
There it is. Well, when can we expect an announcement for next year's lineup?
Well, 2 announcements were made from stage. One was actually made earlier because, as I said earlier, we had a little bit of a problem getting IO Earth to come over this year. So we have committed that they will definitely be here next year. So we're working that out.
Awesome.
And the other announcement that I was able to make from the stage is that we've reached an agreement with I think, another example of us doing something a little bit different and off the beaten trail that will be a great palate cleanser for people. And that is the California Guitar Trio.
Nice. Dude.
Yeah. We've got a few more in the hopper, but they're just not at the point where I'm willing to say anything because we just want to dot a few I's. But I would say probably within the next month, we'll start making a couple of announcements for maybe as many as 3 or 4 more.
Cool.
The trio is great, by the way, Tom. That was the first band I ever saw in this reinvigorated prog scene. They opened for They opened for Flower Kings in a concert I saw in 2002. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, all three of you have been so generous with your time, and I can't express in words how grateful I am for that. Thank you.
You've been generous with the future editing you're going to have to do.
Yeah, I guess
that's exactly what I'm dreading. I got another one of these marathons on Saturday, so
3 hours. Wow.
yeah, I'm going to be taking my coffee intravenously for the next several days.
Yes.
Maria, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Mark, you're awesome. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And Tom, it sounds like you've got a hell of a beast on your hands, and I wish you the best and congratulations.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to Patrick.
You're welcome. Thank you.